think we're talking enough that we should put it in a podcast again. And then you got the camera, and here we are.
We were some fresh-faced boys.
Yes.
And
You didn't have the
more
curls.
hair on my beard and none of it on my head.
It felt like an adventure.
I can hear the music playing in my head.
Do you remember?
21st night of September.
Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the X Button, recorded on the day of the famous September song by Earth, Wind, and Fire. I am one of your hosts, Alejandro. With me is the dollar store Gendo Ikari himself.
Oh, hey everybody, how's it going?
Yeah.
I should have been wearing my glasses.
I know, but you had to be here when I saw a picture of him today, because I saw like a tweet being like, if Gendo Ikari was ever cast in live action, it should be played by Bryan Cranston. And I saw your video, I was like, yeah, like Paul is a Gendo Ikari lookalike in this special area. If you had the glasses, how's life, Paul?
It's doing well. Apparently, having a beard is all that it takes to be Gendo Ikari. I've been doing well. I've been playing some games, revisiting some favorites, and excited to talk about everything today. How are you doing?
Yeah, same. It's like happy first day of fall, I think it is, right?
Fall.
Quote unquote. Yeah, I know some people.
It's about 99 degrees out here.
I know. It's like it's fall in a few places, and it's like fake fall, even though like according to when season started, this is where the best season of the year usually starts, because that's where especially in places where you get actual fall, this is where the cool weather before like the harsh weather starts. But yeah, can you believe it's like September's almost over, Paul? Like everything's just flying.
Just wake me up when September ends.
Yeah.
I'm done with it.
Yeah. Hey, good thing you haven't suffered a hurricane yet compared to last year.
Which is honestly pretty shocking that one hasn't gone through. The first named storm is already only happening now.
And the Puerto Rico one, yeah,
that one, which tore that place up, unfortunately, but it's also heading more north, so it's not gonna even come close to me. But it's a time, that's for sure. We'll see how the rest of the hurricane season goes, and I've got until about November before that kind of ends.
Yeah, which is crazy. Just to think that you can go all that way far before you stop like worrying if you have to evacuate again. But
it used to be only October, and then they moved it further in because the season started getting longer.
Yeah, hurricanes are never a problem here. We just suffered the tropical storms. Even when we had that hurricane warning where a Cat 5 was heading into Nicaragua, and there was like that worry that just by us being so close to Nicaragua, just getting the tail end of that could like ruin it for us back in 2020.
Yeah.
The fact that I live in such a mountainous range, that tends to break a lot of hurricanes that come from that side, but we still get a lot of the rains. So, and it's still raining here, which is like, wake me up until we get to November, which is when that's all rains finally supposedly stop, and that's where we get all the winds from the winds of winter, basically. So, but enough of just all of this nonsense with meteorology, but also our thoughts and prayers are with the people in Puerto Rico. It's like that. I hate how often they get caught up in all this, because I remember back in 2017 that was also a problem. So yeah, especially them being, I'm Latino. We're Latino is such a big spectrum of things, but I always feel a kindred connection to any Latino, no matter what. So I hope that anyone that has a Puerto Rican family or that are actually living in the island, they're all safe despite like what's looking right now. But yeah, we need a little escape from all this nonsense, Paul, because this is the X Button Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Thursday from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing, available on the YouTube channel Escape Media, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links on the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-media. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. So, Paul, we've been playing a lot this last week, especially since we didn't talk about what we had played the week before.
You have been playing a lot.
Yeah.
This is the only time where you actually have succeeded me in playing more games than me this time.
Yes. But the thing is, I played them a little different. But we're going to separate this discussion in a different way that we usually do, because not only we play games, but we played demos / betas of games. So, and most of these we both played together, so we can start talking about it together. So
Yeah.
let's start with the big one that, of course, everyone that was on PlayStation may or may have not played it. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. So,
Yep.
what do you think?
I feel like people are being a little needlessly harsh to a lot of the mechanics of it. I think that most of the things that were changed were absolute positives overall. The maps were really intricate, and it wasn't just you're going and you have 3 options, middle, left, and right, but rather there was a lot of different little hallways that kind of went through. You couldn't just bottleneck a whole area of the map anymore, and I really appreciated that, because that was one of the biggest problems that plagued Modern Warfare. You get one person that just has their spot on one angle, and they could just clear out the entire place. The weapons operated perfectly fine. I love them. I really hope we get more variation in all this, because most of the guns that I noticed were variations of the M4, because they now focus a lot more on the class of the platform, where you can build guns around that platform, which did add a lot of variety. That wasn't really what I was referring to. More what I'm talking about is the MP5 variants. That all kind of felt very similar, which was they had the submachine gun, they had the the DMR battle rifle, and they had the regular automatic rifle, and the automatic and submachine gun especially just kind of felt the same to me. Besides that, though, I really liked everything else. It played as it should, really. And even though everybody was kind of complaining about that whole removal of the sliding mechanic, the slide canceling, and how it's a bit more of a methodical approach, I feel like that only does it good, because moving methodically through an environment instead of just blindly running has been my cup of tea more lately, and also it's more rewarded now, I think. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. But overall, really positive. Can't wait to play it for the next beta.
It's this weekend, and that's when it opens up for all the non-PlayStation owners. I had a long conversation about this with my brother, who is a pro Modern Warfare player. He competes in tournaments with the original Modern Warfare, especially with Warzone. And the conversations I was having with him is like, this reminds me a lot of what happened with the vanilla launch of Destiny 2, where a lot of the changes they made specifically towards the PvP mode of that game were in direct response to hit towards the hardcore and bring the casuals into a little bit more playing field. Like, it's insane how much the mechanics of slide canceling and jumping around, which obviously is like the whole jumping around is popularized because that's how people play Fortnite in a battle royale. And then when that kind of style of play was added with that sliding mechanic, all of that was brought back. That kind of skill set was brought back into the normal Modern Warfare 2019 multiplayer, and that made that multiplayer a complete sweat fest if you're not playing that way. And again, this is it's a very harsh punch in the gut for the hardcore in a way, for them to see that their strategies have now been patched out. The funny thing is that now you see videos of people figuring out ways to implement slide canceling. Do you know that the way to do it now is that you go into the options to enable a double tap in the left trigger to enable the slide canceling, which is, my brother is like, I'm never gonna do this because it's just needlessly complicated. One thing I'll say though is that I was never a big fan of the maps of the original 2019. Is like, to me, that was the most distressing thing about that multiplayer, because I loved the core mechanics, because that was a new engine. I loved how the guns felt and the little things like the aiming and reloading while you're aiming, the general speed of movement that felt less stiff. I would just never buy with the maps that they launched with. And it's so funny that they had to start bringing maps from older Call of Duties, completely remastering this engine for those maps to start feeling good in a way. And I feel they definitely have gotten better with the map design, especially the ones that are like being sampled here. But reading online more about like what people are concerned with is that a lot of these new mechanics seem designed for the new mode that's launching, which is DMC. We haven't played it yet. That's going to be included in Warzone. It feels like a lot of these mechanics are gonna really hit the Warzone community really bad, because they feel like they're gonna be more tuned towards that more Escape from Tarkov style of methodical play that they're gonna push for. And the problem is that the Warzone client from the original one has been slowly shedding players because they have kept removing the maps that people liked, and they just didn't bring back like Verdansk, which was teased that they were gonna implement it in Call of Duty Mobile Warzone that they're launching at any time this year. That's everyone's favorite map, and there's like no way to play that. So it's like now
that's going to be returning for Warzone 2 now.
No, they haven't said that. That's returning for the mobile Warzone, which is still based on the old Warzone. They haven't said anything that's going to be part of Warzone 2.0 that launches in November, unless they find a way to like implement it. Remember, they're doing Warzone 2.0 because they're being bottlenecked by the PS4 and the Xbox One. But I think what I find ironic is that Warzone 2.0 is still launching on last gen. So it's like, what is the point then? I thought you were shedding that to kind of like just remove that from the technology bottleneck. But right now it's like wait and see it. Right now there was like a lot of people that went at the Call of Duty event that we saw last week. That was like they were streaming it. There were people playing Warzone 2 over there, and not many positive things being said by the hardcore that were playing it based on the new mechanics. So I really want to see how that thing launches in November 16 and what it does to the community. So
yeah, the last thing that I'll say about it is I feel like the hardcore people are they're learning the wrong lessons from the previous 2019 Modern Warfare, because think about it, a slide isn't really like a true method to move around quickly. Like it shouldn't have been, and the fact they were able to do it and the devs allowed it is kind of a miracle in the first place. But it's supposed to be like a semi-realistic arcade shooter, so it's like, all right, of course you're going to get that slap down. So I feel like everyone's kind of reacting a bit.
That's what I say, that I can't wait for the full thing to launch and see where consensus lands, because right now if there's a little bit of turmoil with what people are thinking about the changing UIs, the change in speed and everything, this is the Call of Duty for the next 2 years. Remember, it's like that to me, that would be rough if they're like left with this version for a while. So
I kind of say cry about it for them, because it's going to be all of the casual people that are going to be playing it. I would say more even, because it's like that's the game you play when you come home late from work, and anybody who's going to be spending 8 to 9 to 10 hours playing that game, it's just maybe like find some other games to play.
Now real quick before we move from that, what do you think of the other modes like the Rainbow Six Siege, search and rescue, and the third person?
I liked it. People are going to get really pissed about it and really toxic in it though, because I played a little bit of it, and the fact that some people couldn't understand some details, like nobody had patience for it. And there's one detail that they really need to change it, and it is that once you pick up the hostage, you cannot put them down. There is no button to do that. So if you feel like you need to put it down and defend yourself briefly, all you have is like the pistol, and you have to have the hostage. Also, the hostage is unkillable. Therefore, there's no like hesitation to just like throw grenades and stuff. Like there's no worries about the technical aspects of why Siege works with it. So I could see it really needing some work.
Yeah, you could drop this hostage in Siege, right?
Yeah. Okay. That's a huge deal, like because a lot of people pick it up and then put it back down so that they can warn the other team, have them close in, and it's like a whole strategic side of it. Or if you find a specific room that you need to like fight with your actual gun. And since everybody kind of still rushes off on their own, tries to play it like Call of Duty, I can see people getting pissed off and then you not being able to find matches in it. I also didn't really like the third person mode all that much.
Let me guess, were you thrown off by the fact that when you aim you have to go all the way to first person? Yeah,
I don't like it.
Yeah, it's like if you remember,
longer to ADS because of that.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that they didn't just straight up copy how it used to be in when they did third person back in Modern Warfare 2009, where the aiming was like the zoom on the shoulder. Yeah,
keep it third person the whole time and just zoom it in a tiny amount instead of going into the ADS.
Yeah, so, and non-ADSing, the bullet spread it was just too annoying to be able to just play it as it's not even like Battlefront 2 on third person that I could play that without ever ADSing because the bullet spread was easier to just manage. So I would hope they tweak that or they add a little bit of that. And my big thing is that how flexible is the engine that they do to work on this on these games? did they allow them to be able to tweak more severely? Or I heard this term before, is the cake baked to the point that if that's how it's baked, that you're screwed?
This is early enough that they could still make a few like minor changes, not saying a lot. Like they could make a couple tweaks to how something performs, like maybe the physics and like how much something does a certain item, how much the jump works, how much the slide works, if you want the third person mode to be a little different, but not like big items, because that's you're just not going to have time for that until late October. Yeah,
I'll be fascinated just to see what, especially I have a proxy with my brother who plays this game, these games like so competitively himself. I really want to see where the conversation is. I am a campaign guy, so this multiplayer, like, to me, that's a fart in the wind with like whatever the hardcore community says. That's just gonna be funny to just like absorb the tears of sadness that usually comes with like the saltiness.
Normally I care a lot more, but for this one, it's like, y'all just learn to adapt, guys. Calm down. And it's so toxic that I don't really have much sympathy for them anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But moving on from that, Paul, then this other demo popped, and I was the one that told you to, like, you definitely have to try this because this was a big surprise for me. Valkyrie Elysium, the game that was announced at the end of the State of Play back in March.
Square Enix's next new IP.
Not new IP, it's old.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's like a sort of revival. Yeah,
like a PS2,
PS1, and PSP.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So, outside of the, I'm really glad that the combat and the gameplay works really well, because I don't think anything else really would. Just like plot wise, because I did not care about the whole Odin thing, and it's like, oh, you're one of the Valkyries, you gotta go.
I cared so much. I completely disagree. That's really pulled me in, because
we've already talked about how much you've been popping for the Viking and Norse culture lately.
Oh yeah.
I did not care about Vikings before it got really popular. Like a few years ago, and even now it's like I've seen it done well and I've seen it done really dumb, and at this point I'm just kind of in the middle where I'm like, I'll enjoy Viking stuff, but it's not really my thing.
But that's the thing, Valkyrie Elysium is not Viking stuff, it's just straight up the mythology. But obviously that's what obviously I mean, Vikings is like related to that mythology, because that was their religion.
Because like, I'll give you perspective. When I found out that God of War 2018 was going to be Norse mythology, I was not excited. I did not like it, and I did not care, and I was like, I don't know anything about it, whatever. And now I know a lot more, and it's like, okay, this is kind of interesting, but it's because there's so few amount of actual Norse mythology left, like written, that it's mostly people just making up stuff with the names.
Very open. It's like everyone got the kernels based on how that mythology was like written at the time that it was like a big religion, before the people at that time like started transitioning over to paganism and even Christianity, that it's a little bit easier to kind of mold into interpretation in different ways. And that to me makes it more exciting, because it's, even though everything's the same, you see everyone's like own take on it.
Yeah, I just think it's almost like at a certain point you're just using it for the name recognition, and at that point you might as well just make your own stuff. But that's like a very specific me thing. I'm just like, okay, you're going to use the names and then make it a completely different story. Might as well just make your own names and make your own thing. So I just don't really care as much when people do that. Anyway, everything else about it is great. The style, the combo system, the designs of the monsters, all that's been really cool.
Yeah, the combat was shockingly tight. I was like, because I thought it was just gonna be like a light, because it looked original, like what Tales of Arise looked when we saw it. Yeah. Especially after trying Tales of Arise, that was like a fake button masher, but it was still kind of like a turn-based thing. This is a straight up action game. Yes. You don't go into alternate things. As soon as you see the enemy, you can start chaining combos. It was like the closest I've seen a game get to the Nier Automata style of like not DMC, but kind of like still fast.
Yeah, and just like quick, not even worrying about cutaways to like, all right, there's gonna be enemies now, and now you can go in. It's just, hey, there's an enemy, start fighting, which I really appreciate because
having the DMC Nero style, like let's hold like
the grapple
with with apparently no with no limit.
Yeah, because as long as the crosshairs are on the enemy, it'll pull you all the way across the map to it, which is really cool. And I also like that they incorporated platforming with that mechanic. I had a few issues with that, of it not wanting to.
Yeah, lock on. Yeah, that happened to me too. Yeah.
But besides that, it was fun, and the design's really cool. My only other concern is it's a little bit muddy in its watercolor style.
Yeah, it's strange because it's like parts of it look like watercolor cell shade. It has like the black delineation, but then when you look at the face, it's not in watercolor. It feels like it's actually rendered. Yeah, it's like a weird mix.
It's a weird mix. I don't know if I'm vibing with it as much because the problem with it is with cell shaded, you usually want bright colors to pop against that cell shading.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of bright popping colors except for the powers, which is the only exception to that, which I understand that they were going for, where it's like everything's kind of dreary except the powers, which are like bright.
And
colors.
When you're in Asgard or wherever Odin is.
That's true. Yeah. That's a lot cooler, and I understand what they're going for, but I do wish there was like a little bit more of a solid look to it, because as it stands with the watercolor, like I mentioned, it kind of gets a little
one thing like I mentioned that how I like how people sometimes reinterpret Norse mythology for like in their own way that they think will work for them. This feels like Norse mythology modern.
Yeah,
instead of like the more barred area, this feels like a more modern take on it.
Yeah,
like the way Odin is dressed.
Urban fantasy, because it's a lot of those Norse mythology things, it's like that's back then, but this is clearly like a modern take on it, where the gods are still existing and the Valkyrie still exists. I hope that we see more of the Pantheon's characters, because as it stands, it's a little bit like, all right, it's just the Valkyrie and there's just Odin. I want to see some more characters.
Yeah, I imagine there will be more, because this was just a sample. This was a 1 or 2 hour demo that I tell you, I was like, when I finished it, it gave me blue balls. I wanted to keep playing it.
You played like 3 hours of it or something.
I was exploring everything. I was like especially when I got a new sword that you get at the end of the demo.
Yeah,
that is like a fencing thing, and you start like trying it out.
That they actually changed the moveset. I was hoping that there would be a little bit more ability to switch those weapons on the fly, like DMC, where you could like do part of a combo, but there seems to be a bit of a pause that it forces you into.
Yeah.
So it really kind of wants you to focus on one weapon at a time, it seems, which is fine.
Yeah, but it seems like it's deeper. Especially with you being able to upgrade each weapon individually, it feels like it has more depth than I was even giving it credit for, especially in the skill tree that's divided in the attack, the defense, and magic. And that's where I got things like the double jump, the double to triple dodge, and I like that kind of progression, because it makes something that feels like simplistic immediately feel like you're striving towards something. And that's kind of like it's kind of what I tell you, that I don't know if there was this kind of depth in Nier Automata. I don't remember it having it, or if it wasn't explained well.
Did you watch that video that I'd sent you?
No, I forgot. Yeah.
Okay. Well, basically that just showed how you could definitely do some crazy combos of it. But it's funny because, like you had said, at first I hadn't thought of that at all. So I Googled it, and it's really split on how some people like couldn't find the depth to it, and were like, "This is boring. I'm hitting heavy and light, and that's it." And some people were like, "Yo, this is freaking nuts. If you add like this mod in and you do this stuff, and it's like you could." I mean, it's like when we watch Tales of Arise in that one gameplay video, and then the rest of the game is like, ooh, unless you put the effort in, it's really like rudimentary. So I think it's another case of whatever you put in, you get out of it. But I think that overall I was super shocked positively, because I wasn't going to pick it up at all until you tried it out. And I'm glad that you did, because now I'm like, oh shoot, that's that.
Because we had been talking about like, as we look forward for the rest of the year, what are we going to buy? Especially now that it feels like games are finally coming out. This is smack in the middle of us where we are right now, till a game like A Plague Tale Requiem, which is a game that I'm going to talk about the previous game in a little bit. But But it's like, I was like, yeah, it's like, it feels like finally we're having like a road ahead of what we want to play, but we're still a month ahead, and this is coming out next week. So I was like, ooh, because we haven't bought anything since Last of Us. That was earlier this month. Can you believe that? So it was like, and we bought it earlier. So we bought it like back in August. So it feels a little longer since we bought it.
It feels like it just happened too somehow, but at the same time, I guess because I didn't really play Last of Us Part 1 for very long.
Yeah, you played it to completion. I played it to platinum it, and I did that really quick. So I was like, okay, we have something there in that in between spot if we want to play something. And this is something that now that I've tried it, regardless of how it reviews, I really want to try it, especially after what happened to us with Saints Row. That even with the middling scores, we still bought it together and we enjoyed it. I was like,
it was enjoyable.
Yeah, this feels like, especially because this is not a $70 game. This is still in the 60 range. It's with our arrangement, it feels like something that I'd be down to play this as we reach the bigger games that are coming. But I'm also worried because I'm also playing other stuff that I'll talk about a little later. But you didn't play this other demo. I'll talk about it real quick. Wulong Fallen Dynasty. That's the Team Ninja game that was. I don't want to be too harsh on it because I think it was just me finally realizing I'm done with Souls-likes right now. This is from the Neo developer. This feels like a sequel to Neo in some ways. And I had kind of like also the sense of peace that I know this is coming to Game Pass. So maybe sometime next year I'll be able to try it again for free and give it a little bit more of a shake. It plays tight. It's definitely more actiony than Souls. Like it has a different control scheme. That also reminds me a little bit of Neo. But again, I feel like it's like in the year where I went through Elden Ring, I went through Dark Souls 1, and I went through Dark Souls 3. I'm sort of going with Stranger of Paradise, but I forced myself to stop because I want to go through it with you whenever that happens. I was like, I feel like I'm more than filled up with that kind of game. So I don't want to like really talk crap about it because I've read some positive things. The YouTuber I usually mention, Mr. Matty Plays, he did like a 13-minute video called like a brutally honest opinion of Wulong Fallen Dynasty. And the way he mentions it is like, this is what Sekiro could be if it was an RPG. Because Sekiro wasn't an RPG. It was like it was a Souls action game where you were like funneled into just one style of play. So maybe you can watch that and see if it's something that tickles your fancy. But hey, it's coming to Game Pass. So it's like
I'm watching a trailer of it right now, and I feel like this is this was back in August. Okay, because I was like,
there's been a couple trailers. This was revealed.
Awesome.
Yeah, this was revealed at the Xbox show that you didn't watch with me. That's the one that I watched with PJ. That's when it was revealed, and it was coming day one to Game Pass. It's also coming to PS5.
Okay. I can see how it's a little bit lacking in polish in certain ways, but I could also see some people just going nuts for it. This is like if somebody rebooted the Dynasty Warriors genre and then like kind of turned it more into a character story.
That's also a character story. So.
Yeah, right. But that's
the demo is lasting until the 26th. You can, if you want to try it, you can still download it. So
we'll see.
Yeah, it's 15 gigs. It's small, so you can maybe give it a try and see if it buys. Again, it was just like I need more. I feel like I need to be in the specific mood now. I'm really mood based these days. So yeah, that was Wulong Dynasty. So and now real quick, now that was all the demos that we in betas that we played. Now we're into the games we played, Paul. So hit me with this one. That's Gambit Afterlife.
Yes. I was supposed to talk about this a couple of weeks ago when we did not talk about it. And I just want to briefly mention it. Basically, it's a 2D Metroidvania pixel art game. What makes it stand out is it's directly the idea is you're a soldier who dies at the start of the game, and Death himself shows up and says, hey, I'll let you stay alive and come back from the grave, but I need you for something. And then like kind of doesn't really elaborate on that. And as you go through, it's got a lot of personality. You start off and it's like the Kingdom Hearts 1 thing where it's like, all right, pick your weapon, which each weapon, there's like 8 of them, have a different move set. And then from there, there's like classes as well. It's one that lets you use multiple weapons, one that makes you focus on one. There's skill buttons inside of that that you can use that have a cooldown. And then it's all about kind of gathering up and figuring out, because your whole idea is you're trying to find your mother who disappeared on you, but you're also slowly losing yourself each time you die to death, but you're not really sure about his motivations either. I'm still trying to work through it, but it's a lot.
Yeah, not real quick, because I just saw the trailer that it came out in November for PS4. I assume that's where you played it, PS4 and PS5.
Yeah.
Is it Souls-like also?
I see, that's what, when it's 2D, it's so hard to call it a Souls-like.
The thing is that I played this year. I tried Salt and Sanctuary. I tried Blasphemous. They're 2D Metroidvanias with a lot of Dark Souls in it. And I just saw that, and it was like, is it another one of those? Because I'm kind of also soulsed out in the 2D.
It's got a certain different side to it. It's got a much lighter atmosphere. Death himself kind of berates you like Hades almost, and there's a lot of like silly nonsense, a few Easter eggs. So I feel like just on that, it's different in tone. Gameplay, since the skills are on cooldowns rather than like a real resource you have to be careful about using. So like it's not in the, all right, you are like on death's door at all times, you got to watch yourself, like Death's Door, for instance. And I think, and it's not a roguelike either. But it does have like checkpoint areas in a very sprawling open world area. So you could almost call it a little more like Hollow Knight, but way more forgiving. And even like some of the bosses are like not evil. They're just there to kind of walk you through the process of this story, which there's much more of a story than most of those Metroidvania Dark Souls
wait. This game's old.
I just found it on sale one day.
Yeah, it's from 2018.
Wow. So it's, I mean, pixel art doesn't age, so it's just like perfect for me. And there was so much variation in what you could do with it, and I've been trying to research a lot of those pixel art games myself anyway, so that's why I bought it, and it was fun. So if anybody's looking for it, it's often on sale on a lot of those PlayStation.
Especially with the age, I can see. So that usually speaks my language. I just need to finish Salt and Sanctuary and
Definitely.
Blasphemous.
And those are probably a lot more unforgiving, because I didn't have nearly as much trouble as one of those really try-hard.
So it's a little easier then.
Yeah, I was kind of plugging through it as I went, and just having more fun than one of those really punishing times. Anyway, the last thing that I played was revisiting Cyberpunk 2077.
Finally, since you finished it back in December 2020, when you lived in your island and in denial that that game was broken and anything other than the next gen machine. So
I watched the anime for anybody that was watching.
Edge Runners.
Edge Runners came out and freaking floored a lot of people. And understandably, it's not for everyone. I will not try to convince anybody that normally doesn't get into it, but it's really it really got me back into the series and the world that it was built around. And so I restarted
as a parenthesis, this is definitive proof that the whole having a license thing that you can put out on Netflix, so good, that can then make you interested to go play a game that's even old. This has happened twice now with the same company. Witcher show and now this.
Yeah, I feel like there was a couple other things. Oh, Castlevania.
And that one was unfortunate because Castlevania was so good, and there was like no modern game that was like around there for people to satiate that hunger.
I mean, that's kind of what caused me to go back to the old games, and then they made the collections to make it easier. Then we had the Dota, we had the Dragon's Dogma anime, and which was terrible. Never watch it. And there was one last one that was obviously Arcane. Convincing unfortunate souls to try League of Legends. But that one's like worked.
And I think Arcane, I don't know, has a second season of Arcane been announced yet? Not yet, right?
I mean, we know it exists, but they're working on it. We don't know anything about it.
They just haven't officially announced a second season, because I know that they're doing a lot of League of Legends adjacent games that's just not League of Legends. So maybe they could synergize that.
That would be great. I mean, the Project L is in the Arcane universe specifically, like, so the designs from that are being transferred into this, because they did change a lot of designs from existing characters. So yeah, it's been nuts what you can do with a really well produced series where you give people with a lot of creativity the money that they actually need to do what you want them to do, and then they make something freaking nuts. So that's what happened, and then it got me, who was like, I felt like one of the only people who was protecting Cyberpunk back then. And now that they have the next gen version of it,
which
I've
is
only
so
had
good.
a few
That version
funny
is so good.
glitches, but overall, it's overall a perfectly good game now.
Yeah, God,
And
everyone go to
so
Dork at Dork of Art on Twitter and look at the clip he posted of Cyberpunk. Of was it the card that was in the bar that then like got out of it with a backflip and then just landed?
my car and it spawned it on a balcony in like a bar, which like clipped through, caused this havoc noise. People were panicking, and then it ejected the car out onto the street, just looking like a piece of crap that got mangled by a train.
Yeah, but it landed so perfectly. Also, that's what made it so funny.
It landed completely on its tires. It was just chilling.
But here's the thing, because now that I know that game works officially, those things are not as maddening as it would have been back in 2020.
And like anything that would have been game breaking, I think is long gone at this point, because anything that's really happened to me is like, it hasn't actually crashed at all, which
big
used to
improvement.
be the biggest thing that would happen to me even on the next gen version. And I'm trying to think what else. Of course, like there's a few clipping issues here and there, some issues with the NPC pathing, but overall it's like once you get into the vibe of it, you're just going and going and going. And like I always said, the freedom that you create builds and do whatever you want. If you think that you'd like to try something that sounds cool, you probably can do it with the right kind of preparing your attributes and perks. And it's so fun to do stuff like that.
I didn't reinstall it when you told me you were doing it, but
and you almost did.
I played for an hour because I restarted it. I was like, I don't even remember where I left. I still have my save from the last time I left off.
I'm really glad I restarted the game.
I restarted, but then after playing, I did the Street Kid again, where you meet Jackie and all that.
Which I still think is one of the weakest intros, honestly. Even though it kind of reconnects you, I just felt like the Street Kid one was...
to me it was like, I remember vividly when I played that entire intro on PS4 base, and now seeing it now, I was like, I could see, I was like, man, it's cool that I'm seeing this running at a very smooth frame rate, incredible, with a lot of incredible detail now almost everywhere, from like faces and everything now looking like I'm smeared on Vaseline. And it was, but then after that I was like, but I'm not in the mood for this right now. So I was like,
I wouldn't suggest trying to force yourself either, because it's such a dense game to get into that you really need to prepare yourself to try.
Exactly. But I have it installed there because thankfully, as I compared to the PS4 version, it's just 50 gigs or 56. So they half the size of the PS4 version, because the PS4 version is 104 gigs.
Yeah, that was a lot. I think my disc version makes it a little bit different, but it made it so much easier to deal with. And I'm just glad that it's there. I'm glad that they powered through all the really messy stuff that people were throwing at them. I mean, like, no matter how bad the game was, they didn't deserve death threats and bomb threats and all that stuff. And
no
I
one
hope
does.
that people are actually going to revisit this and actually notice how good
and that's the thing, like recent peak numbers are 100,000 on Steam. That's like that's like such a revival for
it was, because we were talking about it when it was at 70,000, and that was like the highest it was since January of the year it came out. So this is better than it's ever been, and that makes me so happy. Because
it is, because it's finally, I mentioned this back in, because I did try the next gen version briefly back in February when it launched, when I said I wasn't gonna, because it was like Horizon was literally 2 days away for me, that then Elden Ring was gonna come out, and then Destiny 2 Witch Queen was coming. So I was like, damn you CDPR for like launching this now.
We really did eat good. That's for sure.
But then I was like, I tried it briefly, because when I learned that it was 50 gigs, I was like, okay, I'll install it just to see it. And that's when I told you, I was like, man, this is so bittersweet because this is, and even the devs said, they told Jason Schreier, like anonymously, when he was like reporting about crunch and all of that towards that game before it came out, a lot of the devs were giving him rumbles. He's like, they want us to push this out in 2020, and I feel based on where we are in dev timeline, the ideal release time would be at least early 2022. So when that version came out in 2022, that was when, estimation wise of what devs were saying needed to be worked on, that was when that was the ideal launch point. So they actually ended up doing that, but because they launched it in 2020, they pissed away all their goodwill so quickly, and still like has that mark, that black mark, that on PlayStation 31 digital AAA product that had to be pulled off from the store. And
it hurts so much.
But now
that happened.
But we're so far removed from that now with a version that works and an anime that even if it's NFSW like heavily, you can even see that in the trailer.
Absolutely.
It's like it's creating that synergy now, because I was like, it sucks they launched it now and there's like no new content, because that would have been a good resurgence. But them launching the Edge Runner update and launching it next to the anime
and adding like the content that they're so famous for adding for free to let you like have more quests, more outfits, the transmog system. And for anybody who is still curious but doesn't know, I would say it's about the same level as Love, Death, and Robots. If you can handle that, you can handle this. But anyway, moving on. It's just, I'm enjoying the heck.
I'm personally happy. Because again, it's like I have learned to separate publisher from developers. These developers didn't deserve the garbage that they were forced to because of when it came out. And this feels like now it set them up to like the nice redemption arc for them, because now they got people playing now without new content. Now more people are curious now, are playing now. The great versions are now.
Them want to revisit the game entirely, because as we've heard, their expansion is only one, and that's all they're doing. I hope that this kind of helps them say, oh shoot, like we did a good job, we've got it to a good point, let's make more expansions or like more free DLC that we've already said we were going to put out, and maybe make like a loose sequel or something. I
feel a sequel would be ideal for them, like a clean slate. This is not a live service game, so usually sequels for this kind of games tends to rejolt the excitement, but we'll see. It depends on how this new expansion goes.
I think part of that, but then also because they filled their pipeline with a lot of the other stuff they've already said they want to move on to.
The Witcher.
I don't think we're going to see this, if ever, for a very long time.
It's a harbinger of doom, especially with the new Witcher being developed in an entirely new engine. Also, not the one that they built.
A long time.
So especially because then it means they're completely removing themselves from their usual dev pipeline. They're moving into something different. So will they be able to constantly handle both? But we'll see. It's like, I want that expansion to be good, because if it's so good and it sells, because that's the thing, if you see money, that's what pushes you there.
True, and they certainly are going to need it. Considering how everything has been.
But they did sell a lot. So they did sell a lot though. So there's interest that it just cratered. So deservedly so. But again, it's like when a game finds a good redemption, I always root for it. I hope that I get into that mood eventually, but I'm in a different mood, more medieval mood. Like
clearly,
with my first,
there's a bit of a trend going on.
So like my first game, I Plague Tale Innocence. This is a game that many times over the last 2 years I was like, oh yeah, Plague Tale. I should go eventually get
one
back
of which
to
I
that.
was able to actually find and post about it, where I was like, you said it it last year.
Back in December when I saw it, because the first time I said that myself was when they announced Requiem in 2020. The game over. So I was like, oh, a sequel. I remember that game completely passed me by. Here's what I learned. That game came out around the time I was playing Days Gone in 2019. So that's why I got that game.
Wait, wasn't Days Gone 2017?
No, 2019.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, Plague Tale Innocence.
Exactly. And I wish I had paid more attention to what kind of game it was, because this is as close as I've seen anyone give me a Last of Us like game. Maybe not as good, but so close. And in the spirit. I mean, enough so that they, for Requiem coming up, They got Neil Druckmann himself to write like the foreword for the art book that they're releasing for the new one.
Yep.
This is so heavily inspired. It's like very methodically paced, very what's the words that I'm trying to think of? It's like it's very deliberate and so well done for the kind of team there. When I learned that game was made by 45 people, that's as double A as you can get, but it doesn't look like one, especially playing it on PS5, because they did a legit next gen version. I tell you, it's like they had. Where did you play this game, Paul?
PS4.
Okay, so you did play the PS4 version, so you never tried the PS5 native version. So they gave the PS5 native version on PS Plus in the middle of last year. That's when I started with they finally gave it to me. Maybe I should play it. And this game is some of the best use of the DualSense, from like the triggers. It's so cool because you know how you run with the R2 button, and the feedback of the R2 button like mixes with the running animation when you're running. You feel it go like this when it's running, and then when you're like swinging the when you're using your slingshot, seeing it like have like the feet that very. The DualSense is like right now it's such a 50-50 on how developers, some use it well and some don't use it well at all. Like I feel like if, for example, Modern Warfare 2 finally is the first Call of Duty that I feel uses it right, because they're like a pro controller that just the half trigger already triggers a thing. And this one doesn't have too much strength and then interacts with what you see on screen, and it makes it more immersive. And when you're in the parts where you see the millions of rats and you feel the vibration of where you're staring the rats and feel like so strong, it's so immersive. I wish that game was strong throughout. It has 14 chapters that I was so in love with, and chapters 15 and 16 to me is where it sort of falls apart. The last night that I was playing that game, I mean, you just saw my text. There's this. Yeah. I read around. That's the pain point everyone that played that game always mentions. Is like this part where you have a friend that's gonna push a cart, and you have like a bunch of enemies coming at you. That's such a game. That's a game that's so stealth focused and so deliberate that having one section that requires quick reflexes in a very methodical game just didn't work. It took me like 30 minutes of just constant frustration that it was like actively ruining what I was like, this is such an incredible experience that I was like, this ruined this game for me. But then it's like it picked up from there, and stupid final boss of it, rat tornadoes aside, it was like I enjoy this. And that's the thing, like even though the end of the end soured me a little bit with my entire experience, I said if I would score it, it was like 8 out of 10. It's a great game for me.
Yeah,
it's
which is still a great score.
Yeah, especially for what it is. And knowing the budget, because to me what it feels like is that they ran out of budget near the end. So the final section of that game, because it ends also a little abruptly, even with the post-credit scene, I was like, yeah, it's just not even that. It just establishes that you're in the round, basically. That at least sets up where Requiem will pick up. But seeing trailers and the gameplay overviews that they've been releasing for Requiem, now it feels like they're giving them more money, because Innocence was such a surprise for many, especially when people got to experience it when it got on PS Plus and also on Game Pass. Sad that Game Pass had to remove it recently, but it was there for like 2 years, so many people had a chance to play.
Especially this close to the new release, that they were taking it off Game Pass in the first place.
Oh yeah,
I would think this is the perfect time for it to be there.
I wonder if there was something in their contract, because they're gonna give Requiem and day one on Game Pass, so I'm still debating where I'm gonna play that one, because I technically can play for free. I pay for Game Pass, but it will depend on the Digital Foundry video, just to see like what the differences are.
True, but if I'm getting it, it'll be halfsies with you, because despite all that how much I love it, no,
you're a cheapskate.
$12.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is perfectly now how much this game's worth, because
it was 50 when it launched.
Yeah,
it was it was being positioned in the AA space.
Honestly, the price would have really messed up my opinion of it.
I would have paid the 50 for it. Again, you put too much value on time.
I put just enough value on time. Thank you very much.
No, to me, it's like if it's quality. And people tell me it's quality, it's like a tight experience that I enjoy throughout instead of one that's long that eventually can like ruin itself. That's more valuable for me. Like, I don't care spending too much time in a game if the game respects my time. That's kind of like where I see it. But everyone has a different way. Like,
I did say at the time that it was the $12. Now I would definitely bring it up a lot more, but because I have learned the value of a experience that gets out of your way at the right time. Because I mean, now I've played a lot of those that just suck the soul out of me. So I would definitely change that now, looking back on it, if I had to replay it. But even so, I think it was like last year that I played it. So it's still kind of fresh in my mind, and it was iconic enough that those moments really live in my head rent free. Like I was saying, like the moment, unfortunately, that gets kind of ruined by the difficulty, but I really love that one specific character that you kind of lose during that whole cart moment, where to the point that I kept trying to actively do things to stop them from dying. I was like, if I can stop the arrows from being shot, he can't die.
But
so I was like, I got good at the slingshot, and I still couldn't save him.
To me, it was like I was so tilted at that point that didn't really register for me, and that bummed me out, because other areas of that game like started like resonating, because initially I was put off by the dialogue, and especially the way that it was acted. I was like, yeah, this is like the double A-ness of things starts like seep in, but still it's very impressive effort for a team that then went to make Microsoft Flight Simulator, the recent one. They have an amazing engine, because Microsoft Flight Simulator is a looker, and that's a double A team, and now they're putting in the money. So I like that Focus Home Interactive was establishing itself as a nice middle spot before Embracer and its onslaught of reviving all the double A's started happening, because at least the Focus Home Entertainment is giving us double A experiences with triple A quality, and that's a good middle spot to be. I want to see how much bloated in Requiem will be, because now it's being positioned as a full-on title, but it still feels like it's maintaining the essence of what Innocence is, plus more, with more combat options. And I just hope that it's not just a one-hit kill all the time, because you're just one-hit kill all the time with on Innocence. But that like also helps.
Changing a few things about Requiem that I'm hoping that they're gonna kind of like, all right, Amicia's gotten better. She's gotten armor. Maybe like she's gonna have a couple of hits, and then I mean that would be a perfect place to upgrade the gameplay, and make things more harrowing by more dangerous threats. That even if it doesn't kill you in one hit, there's more.
Yeah, but I tell you, it's like it still became one of my most anticipated games. Even with my roughness with Innocence, is like we rarely get games like this. Authored, single player, narrative focused games that are like very deliberate in how they're designed. So that was such a great experience, even with its rough spots near the end. And I'm glad that even our friend Zach played it, because he helped me a little bit kind of like set some expectations of what was coming up, and I still ended up enjoying it a lot, even with hating that card section. But before this other one, thanks to the power of Game Pass, I got to play Metal Hellsinger, the Doom-like game that is very focused on rhythm game, because it's basically your reticle has like beats that you have to like pull your trigger to maximize your damage to the beat of a song. The idea of that is really cool, because especially if you vibe with rock and roll, especially heavy metal rock and roll, and seeing how the game manages to do the beat, there's something cool that it was hard at times that I was to not do this with the face and pulling the trigger with that, and especially because that's part of the gameplay. If you're shooting out of beat, you don't do as much damage, and it was like such junk food. Yeah, it was such junk food of like I'm in arenas just shooting with the vibe, and especially when you get into the synergy of killing a bunch of enemies, executing the demons with the same strength of the Doom execution that gives you health and all that. I was like, yeah, they managed to make a cool Doom-like game. Unfortunately, same as Plague Tale Innocence, this game falls apart in its final two levels. It's short also, but it was like this game suffers from one of the lessons that it learned going from Doom 2016 to Eternal, that you really don't want to be stuck in one room with wave after wave after wave of enemies. And that started becoming really unbearable in the final two levels, because I was like, especially because I died, because you have lives for a level. If you lose all your 3 lives, you have to restart the whole level. And when that happened to me, when I reached one of the end bosses, that was like a heavy bullet sponge, and I thought and you can spec your weapons at the beginning of a level if you want to take like a shotgun, 2 revolvers, a crossbow with explosive arrows, or 2 sights that you can like throw as boomerangs that are basically infinite. In that level, I took my shotgun and the sights, and the enemy was so far off that my bullets were not hitting enough, so the health was going so slow, and that's when I died. And then I went back into at the beginning and going through all those levels again and realizing, god damn, there's a bunch of wave after wave of enemies here that it broke my sense of disbelief. And then what I was really loving, I was like, this is fine, it's cool, it's a cool idea, but yeah, it's like those little things that when it breaks the spell and you start realizing the machinery that makes those levels work, it's unfortunate. But it's like the things that it was on Game Pass, and again, Game Pass, the power of these subscription services, like if something looks remotely interesting, at least you can give it a try, and then you end up not liking, it's like, hey, it was still part of a subscription with other 100 games. So because I've been rewatching that's what's funny, this year I'm gonna rewatch Game of Thrones twice. I did it earlier this year, now doing it with my mom. I think I mentioned it last week that I've been doing that, and I didn't play many games. It's put me in that kind of like old-timey medieval slash bardic setting in my mind, that finally put me in the mood to finally play Assassin's Creed Valhalla. This is a game that I bought at launch.
Promised day has arrived.
Yeah, I played the first 2 hours at launch when I was on PS4, and then something nagged me in my head saying, there is a next-gen version that's going to look so much better and run so much better. Don't play this experience on the decrepit PS4 that was already looking very grimy and running the thing at sub 30 frames. I was like, okay, I'll wait. Then I finally got my PS5 in 2021. I had a bunch of games stacked up, and I was like, I'll finally play Valhalla. But then something cleared in my head, you never played the DLC for Odyssey. Sorry, for Odyssey. And I was like, yeah, you're right, I'm gonna play the Legacy of the First Blade and the Atlantis DLC for Odyssey. Play through all of that, and altogether that felt like a full game. So I was like, I think I got my Assassin's Creed experience for the year right now. I don't want to jump straight to that immediately. Then this year, I was like, this will be the year that, especially with Dawn of Ragnarok, I was like, okay, I have an excuse to finally play Valhalla. I let all the other DLCs stack up, and I'll finally play Valhalla. And then Origins was rumored to have that 60 frames patch that eventually ended up happening. So I was like, Origins is one that I also didn't do the DLC, and I played it back in 2017 with a different mindset of what these games were. I want to give it another shot, and I talked about Origins earlier this year. A massive turnaround, in my opinion, for that one. Then I was like, I already have my full Assassin's Creed experience here. I don't think I want, especially this happened to you. You did tail end of both Origins and Odyssey. And then jumping into Valhalla, I was like, that's the Borderlands 3 conundrum for me. Play all of that together before the newer entry, and then you're burnt out when they're basically the game.
There was like a good 2 or 3 weeks between me starting Valhalla and finally kind of getting burnt out that I did a lot of damage to that game. So like, props to it for actually holding me despite playing Odyssey, the DLC for Odyssey. I mean, for Origins, and then the rest of Odyssey before this, and the crossover in Valhalla for that. So I was like, somehow I managed to get it all through that, and I really vibed with the more methodical approach at times for especially some of the, not really stealth, because stealth is still broken in Valhalla, but a lot of the just
yes and no.
Process of
it. Yes and no. Yeah, but I'll talk about it.
Yeah. But yeah, I just it's still surprisingly a solid game, and as you've mentioned, it's a looker, and it's somehow finally spanning the original trilogy and what we're seeing right now. But go ahead.
Yeah.
With your thoughts.
Finally being able to fully dive into this, it was like, there's just something I really love about Norway and that old-timey England. It's like, me, that I like my places to feel a little bit more grander than life or more exotic than what I usually look for. I feel like there's something we can definitely give the 3 settings of the RPG Assassin's Creed, both Origins, Odyssey, and this one, is that Ubisoft managed to find a way to present these places as magical settings in a way. And especially, and I feel Valhalla really mythologizes aesthetic, especially seeing how much it ties in again, circling back to Norse mythology. I really love that dream early in the game where you see basically an allure of Tyr with someone that loses his hand and Fenrir. And that's basically kind of like the trigger for like what's Ragnarok is, and getting to see a massive wolf Fenrir. I was like, oh man, it's at least they're embracing that. But I think more importantly for me with Valhalla, I didn't realize that this was finally the game Ubisoft finally decided, oh yeah, there used to be a meta narrative back in the early Assassin's Creed that used to be like the thing that kept people hooked in. Now we are very awkwardly connecting all of that back again to the game we launched in 2012 by doing another world-ending thing after we did a world-ending thing in that one, and finally tying those threads together. And I was like, oh man, why didn't I know this? It's like, because I mentioned it in our chat, from 2007 to 2012, to me, it was like learning that meta narrative that lean into the future and Desmond and tying to the past and present. That's what kept me hooked, because it was such a cool idea, that kind of like synergy. And then after Assassin's Creed 3 wrapped that up in a very disappointing manner, then from Black Flag onwards, it was like I kept playing the games as more as tradition. It was like I already love the series, so I was like, I'll keep playing them. But every time I kept playing them, hoping that I was like, I would hope that then we start picking up the pace again in the present, and see if there's a point to just only, because I like going into historical trips of going back in the past and synchronizing points and getting to meet historical figures. But to me, what makes that series cooler is kind of like the meta narrative, that in the context of something greater. And
that was the biggest thing for me, because everybody kept wanting to buy the next one to find out what the next arc was for Desmond and the crew. I mean, that's why at first I wasn't going to buy Brotherhood, because I didn't realize that it was a sequel. I thought it was like a spin-off.
To be fair, initially it was positioned like that. Everyone was shocked
how it wasn't crazy.
Yeah. Especially because here's the thing, when Brotherhood was announced, it was announced 4 to 5 months after Assassin's Creed 2.
Right.
And they
so
mentioned,
there's no way.
Yeah, and they
didn't make a whole nother game.
Yeah, and they mentioned how it's like, oh yeah, it's gonna start Ezio again. So it was like, okay, so we're moving away from a new game introduces us to a new protagonist,
right?
And it's gonna have multiplayer, because those were the initial points. They were like, everyone was like, it's spin-off, I'm not gonna play that. It was closer to release when they were like, no, don't worry. It's like, even though we're gonna introduce multiplayer in this game, we have gathered 6 Ubisoft studios to work in this thing to give you the biggest single map in an Assassin's Creed yet. And then when that game launched and the reviews started coming in, and people were like, there's a really solid, if not the best single player Assassin's Creed right now here. Yeah. And play it, because big things happen in the future.
Seriously. Like, it is night and day. It's before Brotherhood and after Brotherhood for the things that happen. You could argue more happen in Brotherhood than happen in 2.
Equally. I would say it's just as equally important. Yeah.
It's just, it's very much a sequel for sure.
God, I love Brotherhood. Brotherhood was, I remember playing it in holiday 2020. It was such a nice surprise, because I wasn't expecting that game to be as meaty as it was.
Definitely. And then you compare that with the modern storyline of Revelations, where nothing happens.
Technically, things happen near the end, but it's like,
okay. There are a lot of things that happen at the end, but it's like the whole game kind of not much until that.
It was basically that was the thing. Like, Revelations was just the closing of the chapter, the past characters, and setting the stage for 3. It kind of like finally solidifying the things that you were teased on 2 and Brotherhood. Revelations was finally this is what happened. Having a Neptune, Orion, whoever the bearded guy is at the end, that from like the Isu, that basically shows you this is what happened to our civilization. And having that really cool CG trailer of the end of the world early on, and be like, this is what's gonna happen, and now you stop it in 3, and then 3 crap the bed so darn hard. And I mean, you were playing remastered.
Yeah.
You didn't put it here, but it was like, I don't know how much more you played of that one.
Honestly, I kind of forgot to mention it because I played through most of that intro area in one sitting, and then I just didn't really have an interest in continuing. Because, for anybody that didn't know, I also played Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered, and that was a bit of a mixed bag for me.
Yeah, because it was like that remastered is weird. because they redid the graphics, but I don't think they did it better. The faces look rough.
It might honestly look worse than it did,
Mm.
especially worse than in my mind. Whereas you have something like off the back end of Last of Us Part 1, where it's like rebuilt from the ground up. Like they put work into that. And this is like, hey, we're just going to put the same assets into the new lighting engine and see what happens. And it did not work. And they were like, all right, ship it.
Yeah, and the thing is that parts of that thing looks worse, but the deeper you get and you go into the world, that looks better.
Yeah,
it's that weird dichotomy that a remaster, that it's not an overall improvement. That if you had the 360 version and backwards compatible on Xbox One, I would recommend playing it that way. At least you see it or as originally intended, but it doesn't run at 60. But here's the thing: you're playing it on PS5, so it's like that game doesn't run at 60 at all. But if you have remastered on Xbox Series X and S, it has FPS boost, so you can play that game with the
crazy that's even a thing.
Because Ubisoft didn't do the 60 frames, but that was Microsoft. They went into the code and be like, we're gonna like brute force a frames patch for free.
They put more effort into that than Ubisoft did. So it's like, at some point, I'm gonna get hurt enough that Ubisoft is gonna be dead to me, despite the fact that they just own my childhood and my teenage years in a vice grip.
I'll say this: Valhalla, it definitely feels to me like a sequel to Assassin's Creed 3, weirdly, because it's still like it feels like colonial England in the same way that you're going through colonial America. In a way, kind of like the less tall place, even though this place has castles, so there's like actual verticality here where there wasn't in Assassin's Creed 3. There's a mechanic from Assassin's Creed 3 that they teased when that game came out: the canoes. That you could like ride a canoe sitting. You can find images of Connor like riding a canoe.
There's no place or need for it ever. But even then, Valhalla is weird because the canoes exist in it, but there's no penalty for you just calling up your actual ship right there at the river. Yeah. So then it's like, what's the point of the
It's just options. It's just basically options.
So I do appreciate the flavor, but then especially when you revisit something like Odyssey, whereas like your ship was for the big waters and that was all you could use it for, and then Origins was like that was all you had, really.
Yeah, you had then you had like those wood things that then you stand with like the sticks.
They had like a single sail and you could kind of paddle your way out. But then of course the story introduced actual ships, but more to the point, it's like 3 just, they could never decide how they wanted the mechanics to work in the Assassin's Creed series, because they would change like fundamental parts of the controls every
3 game. Was the first. No, here's the thing: 1, 2, Brotherhood and Revelation play exactly the same. 3 is the first chip, because before.
Okay, so they changed and shifted things and improvements for each of those games for sure. But they had like a good solid plan for it. 3 just freaking did away with all of that, and I feel like it's worse for it.
Here's what happened was that before 3, to be able to run quick, it was right trigger and A or X. Right. That's what it started, like the free running, that if you hold them and you go in a straight line, that's when your character started to do a little bit of the parkour, like jumping over stuff and all that. Right. But if you were not holding the A or X button, depending on which system you are, then your character would just jog normally. 3, and like starting from 3 to until at least Unity, everything happened in the trigger. If you were holding it fully, now you were already in parkour mode. And the problem of doing that is that if you were holding it fully, it felt like you were jumping on stuff. It felt like you were like running into things that you were not meant to do. And the only time that you would press the A or the X button is to be able to jump farther out if you don't have a place to like parkour. That worked if you're in the woods, because it made going from tree to tree smoother because you're holding the trigger. When you're in a city, that didn't work because you're like jumping over stuff that you were not meaning to do. So it made the game smoother in a way and also messier. That's what happened. And then Black Flag made it less messy, but it's still in that same mechanics. But being out in the open when there's less city and there's like jungly areas in the in the islands, it made those mechanics work better. I tell you, if you play 3, if you're holding the trigger, you're never gonna be able to run down the stairs. You're gonna jump. It's so weird. It's like
it's just, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. It just wasn't a fun experience.
Yeah, and then Unity and Syndicate was the one that they added extra wrinkles that you're holding the trigger and the A or X button, you're parkouring up. And then if you're holding the right trigger or circle or B button, you're parkouring down. That also, again, was something that in theory, in animation style, it would work, especially Unity. Had like the weird like backflips and all of that. But then in practice, it didn't. So
it's... Oh, Unity. I wanted it to be good so bad.
And that's the thing. It technically is now. Now that it's clean.
It is.
The thing is that game was tainted.
I did try to revisit it, and the faces were still a little jacked up from the lighting, but that might have just been the tech issues.
Yeah. That's a game that never... And here's the thing. The Unity and Syndicate engine don't work on PS5, especially Syndicate. Syndicate's broken on PS5.
Yeah.
If you play Unity on Xbox Series X and S, FPS boost. Oh, it's another one.
And I actually do have that only on PS4. I used to actually have a code for the Xbox One version.
Do you get the Xbox One with the Assassin's Creed bundle? Because that's the one I got.
Technically, my roommate bought that version, never used it, gave it to me, and then I never ended up using the code. So it expired like 5 to 10 years ago. But it was like, what was I going to use that for? So it's a bit of a trade-off there. But...
Paul, I tell you, I'm going to throw it out there. If we ever do another Evergreen episode, I would love us to just really talk about Assassin's Creed, because I just love that series. I really love fundamentally a lot of this series. And I tell you, like Valhalla, I have played 12 hours. I spent 8 hours in Norway just cleaning that whole map up.
You spent a lot of time in Norway, a lot more than I did, that's for sure.
Everyone always told me, just get out of Norway. But I was like, I'm enjoying the Aurora Borealis. I'm loving the snowy places. Like the biking theme that kicks up when you're like climbing to do the synchronization parts. It's like, there's such great atmosphere. That was like, man, I'm really, really vibing with this. And also on top of the kernel of knowing that now the story feels relevant again in a modern time in a way that hadn't in any game other than Syndicate.
To everything that you do when it has... Okay, you're here for a reason. You need to figure out something that the character knows.
Yeah, it's recontextualizing everything. And more importantly, this is the most these three RPGs, this is the most it's felt like an Assassin's Creed game with having the actual order at the beginning of this game, because Origins, you establish the order near the end. Odyssey doesn't even touch about it. That's just the origin of the Order of the Ancients, which ended up being the Templars, and giving you the option for one-hit kills all the time with your blade. And yes, you're seen way too quick in this game, but if you tweak the settings, because this game has a haven for accessibility, I tell you, you can like tweak so many things to give you so much time for an enemy to see you. Still, for this game, you have to do the blade and your bow. I tell you, they see me bow and arrow.
I will say, for me personally, I felt like there was almost no difference in the accessibility options for some reason.
You're not tweaking them correctly then, because I could feel it.
People have said that they're it's in the red areas. It seems to not matter for some people, no matter what you change. Like
the thing is that there's no way to switch the enemy vision cone. Like there's no way for that. It's just that when they see you, there's a yellow state before they become red.
Right, but there is a glitch where that doesn't happen for a lot of people.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't change, like, because that's the option that gets changed. If the game just does away with it, it'll go straight from like it'll skip the yellow phase, and it goes.
I've been in red phase. I've been everywhere. So
that's unless I've been like, for me, it consistently happens. So it's just not a universal process. So some people it's fine with, and some people it just doesn't work for some reason. But that being said, it's much more improved in a lot of areas, and especially after I started unlocking certain skills, like the slowing time when you get spotted or whatever. Like,
that's what I was meaning. That's what I was meaning. It's like, yes, it's like there's no way to cleanly do stealth where you can only use your hidden blade there, but with the things that you unlock to the time where you're like I mentioned, that you're like sort of spotted and you can eliminate an enemy before he alerts everyone. that can be improved both in accessibility option and the things that you unlock. So there's ways to still make a stealth playthrough in a way that in like if you were playing Odyssey, if you wanted to do the full stealth thing, you had to like spec yourself with the stealth tree, like having all those stats super high so that when you were stabbing you could at least do one hit kills. And even then there were some enemies that no matter what you leave them with a sliver of health and then still enter into combat. And then Origins, easier way for you to like upgrade your blade and just do the full stealth. But I feel this is the one that at least now finally gives the option, even though the game is not intended for you to use your blade and completely kill everyone immediately, but you can put the stealth for it to be like always one hit kills, even though there's an upgrade that you have to do a mini game to get the one hit kill no matter what. It's like completely irrelevant if you put the stealth at its easiest. And that's what I put, because I was like, I'm gonna make this feel like an old school Assassin's Creed game, even though it's still like in that RPG style. But I'm 12 hours in. I've heard this game is monstrously long, not just from you, but from many people. There's many memes. You should find the Gene Park tweet of him entering the final phase, and he felt like he literally tweeted, I feel like I'm starting my final semester of college. That's what he said when he was like playing through it. So we'll see. It's like that's kind of what I mentioned, is like right now that there's nothing, I really want to play this, but Valkyrie Elysium is happening in the middle of this. I want to see if I get so deep into Valhalla that I will want to finish it, or Valkyrie Elysium will make me put it away. But I'm glad that I'm finally at this point. And I think what helped is that now that Mirage is real, now that we know that's coming, I was talking with my brother. Like right now, my brother is actually playing God of War. Also, he never played God of War 2018, but now that he knows Ragnarok's coming, there's something in his mind clicked. You know what? I should play it. So that tends to happen if you know a sequel's happening. That can be sometimes a motivation to hit something in your backlog. So enough of what we've been playing, Paul, because it's a lot. Even though there's not many news, kind of.
I'm already exhausted though.
Yeah. So we'll try to speed through this a little bit, because I don't think we have much to say, but at least this would be fun to talk. So press X.
Of course.
All right, Paul, we're entering some slightly shaky territory. I hope that Rockstar doesn't care about us, because they sure have been like really hard on this. So just for context, over this weekend, Rockstar literally suffered probably the worst leak for a gaming company of all time. It's like because they're developing Grand Theft Auto 6. So what we're gonna do here is that we're gonna like read a timeline of everything that's happened to this game. So this is from IGN, story number 1. Grand Theft Auto 6 leaks. Everything that's happened so far. So a story by Matt Kim. On Sunday, September 18, a massive and unprecedented leak hit one of the most anticipated games of the decade. Dozens of video files related to Grand Theft Auto 6 began appearing on fan forum GTA forums, giving the world a first, extremely unintended look at Rockstar's next AAA game. That's what's funny, is that Rockstar usually waits so late to show you their game until it actually looks really ready. Remember Red Dead 2. The leak has caused a massive fallout, kickstarting a discussion about leaks within the video game industry and how they affect every level of game development. While the story of the GTA 6 leaks will continue, here's everything you need to know about this saga so far. So to start us off, so the first time we heard from GTA 6 was on February 4th, 2022 in a press release, where they said, "We're pleased to confirm the active development for the next entry in the Grand Theft Auto series is well underway." Rockstar wrote earlier this year, "We look forward to sharing more as soon as we are ready, so please stay tuned to the Rockstar Newswire for official details." However, with the announcement coming from a press release with no additional materials, it seemed that GTA 6 was still very early in development. Rockstar parent company Take-Two Interactive and its CEO Strauss Zelnick followed up by saying more of GTA 6 would be shared on Rockstar's schedule, so probably years from now. That didn't happen. So, kind of like as mentioned, on September 18, GTA forums received all these leaks. There were like 90 clips. Various clips with unfinished assets showed us several elements of the game in development, including parts of the world, gunplay, and NPC AI. The clips also seemingly confirmed some rumors about GTA 6 that were already spreading online, such as the existence of male and female protagonists. The leak was from a user named Teapot Uber Hacker, who also claimed to be the same person who hacked the ride-hailing app Uber earlier this month. Then the takedowns began. As reported by VGC, takedown requests appeared to come from individuals with Rockstar email addresses. And those takedowns came to both the GTA forums and the GTA 6 subreddit. And messages on both sides explained that they were complying with requests from Take-Two to remove any and all copyrighted material. The original GTA forums thread was later reinstated, albeit locked for new comments and with all links to stolen material removed. Here was funny. All of that was happening, but they were denying originally. It was like, yeah, this is all hearsay. Don't believe it. You know how what they usually say? But the fact that you're copyright striking something, that's basically confirming it's real. So in a surprising move, then Rockstar confirmed the veracity of the hack, which until then was still being touted by some as a very elaborate hoax. This was the message from Rockstar. We recently suffered a network intrusion in which an unauthorized third party illegally accessed and downloaded confidential information from our systems, including early development footage for the next Grand Theft Auto. At this time, we do not anticipate any disruption to our live game services, nor any long-term effect on the development of our ongoing projects. We're extremely disappointed to have any details of our next game shared with you all in this way. Our work on the next Grand Theft Auto game will continue as planned, and we remain as committed as ever to delivering an experience to you, our players, that truly exceeds your expectations. We will update everyone again soon, and of course, we'll properly introduce you to this next game when it is ready. We want to thank everyone for their ongoing support through this situation, the Rockstar Games team. We're ending there, Paul.
Yep.
So, this was a whirlwind in Sunday when it happened.
It's so crazy to the point that even my dad heard about it
Yeah.
and texted me asking if I'd heard, and I was like, yes, I have, and it is bad. So I was kind of giving him an updated rundown of everything that I understood about it and how ridiculous this is comparatively. And of course he was like, yeah, I guess they gotta get better cybersecurity, and I was like, that's
not what happened.
Not what happened,
Yeah.
Dad. But of course it's like, what's a 58-year-old man gonna understand about
No, yeah, but it's just so funny that twice this year he knew about the Activision Blizzard announcement, and
he was actually the one that told me about the Uber hack, because I didn't know about that before.
Did that tank the stock? Like the Uber hack tank the stock? Because that's how he would know, right?
I think so, yeah, because he hears about it a lot from like the MSNBC crew and like Jim Cramer and Mad Money, all that. But yeah, so they talk about stuff like that and how that affects stocks. He didn't say how yet, and I haven't looked at it because apparently this has been a very bad time for stocks and finances. So I've been kind of keeping my brain elsewhere because I don't need that kind of anxiety in my life. So I can only imagine how badly this must have hit them.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. Like, they are trying to downplay it right now because the big thing that came out that it's still being confirmed whether it was a hoax or not was that not only was all this footage being like they got hacked out of like a Slack channel that was being used by people working from home and from within Rockstar. These guys, yeah, that's how they were sharing like all these footage of like the game builds and all that, and through that's where he was claiming, oh yeah, I also got the source code for both these new game and also GTA 5. And is it kind of like what I was telling you and Zach in our chat, that was like, if someone like has access to source code for your game engine, especially for a game that's either early in development or already launched, that's your gateway into like hacking that game into oblivion. And that's also a problem if your source code is available in a game that's still actively being played by people, because then that's how you develop cheat software. That's how you get deeper into a game engine to like start wrecking things. And if that was happening, if this hacker already had the source code for GTA 6, a game that's being planned to also have heavy online integration because they're gonna like evolve it over time, because they're trying to make it more a hybrid of GTA 5 and online instead of like two separate things. That was going to be a problem. Right now, they're still alleging that they didn't get the source code. That's why they're like pushing timeline hasn't been affected. The things that we'll see is like, I do believe someone could have acquired source code. You got 90 videos of this thing. 90. That's how many clips were out there from like. And do you see any of the leak? Because I got to see one. I got to see one of you're playing as a female protagonist in a restaurant, like you're robbing it, and I was like, yeah, that definitely looks like GTA. This is real. I recognize that animation so well, and even though there were morons in the internet, I'd be like, this looks like doo-doo. It's like, I cannot believe it. I was like, you guys don't understand like early development like at all. And I think one of my favorite things that happened with all of this was that there were actual devs that started like showing like very early footage of games that were praised for their graphics. Like when they're kind of like, if you look down at that story all the way down, the Remedy guy that
that I've loved about this is that people have been sharing all of those, because my side of Twitter that shows a lot of the design and interesting side of like indie developers, I just saw one that I retweeted about Horizon Zero Dawn, and it was like, hey, everybody's talking about this, like visuals are the first thing done. It's like, this is a picture of a Thunderjaw and Horizon Zero Dawn. It's just like this big white block thing with like some circles around it, and it's like a dude from Modern Warfare shooting it with a gun. It's like they just they like, you throw it together whatever you can to make it kind of work until it's ready. And I love that side of it, because it's one of those things where like people don't really know how it works, even though there's like
they pretend they do. They pretend that they're these keyboard like warriors that like armchair developers, that they absolutely know how games are made. And I'm glad that like I've been like looking online, and it's like, even though there's been a lot of people demonizing the morons, because that's what they are, like morons, they're so few and far between. It's so easy to ratio them and just clown on them. And that there's like more people that at least being more understanding of what game development is. And I'm glad even then, like you have developers really like coming to the aid of Rockstar and be like, hey, for all those few morons that are saying that this is, remember Control, one of the most praised graphically impressive games of the year came out. Here's how it looked. Boom. And this article has it. It's like, it's so cool to see that. And I would hope that more people understand it. I think this past year, EA Motive with the Dead Space remake has been kind of good at that, showing like very early footage of how things look. The more these things are out in the open, the more at least people can educate the idiots. And
it doesn't help that it's kind of hard to show the entire process, because a lot of it's not even visual. Yeah. So it's like a lot of people don't have the patience to see it, so then they just kind of make up their own narrative around the process.
But when you have proof like that, at least out in the open, it's cool to have as reference for if anyone wants to start making an argument of how things are really made. I'm just glad that now developers will be like coming at. I like the solidarity shown from developers to developers, even if one game is like more popular than others. It's like it shows a good side to the game dev community that's not as partisan and not as like flame bait as you would think is, based on how actual gamer communities tend to behave. So I really like how and the funny thing is that this is so bad for Rockstar that the FBI is freaking involved. That to me is like the funniest thing. That's how you know it's bad. That it's an FBI investigation, especially because it was the guy that hacked Uber said that he was the same guy. So it was like Rockstar's not cooperating with Uber to join in with the same investigation. So we'll see what
kind of world we're living in where that is a real headline. Like,
the FBI.
The FBI is helping Uber and Rockstar, creators of Grand Theft
Auto,
to fight hackers.
I tell you, because Paul, Rockstar has their work cut out for them, and like they are the masters of satiring real world. How can you satire the satire? I said it before, satire died in 2020. So I mean, you saw the video I posted with the Evangelion, like the end of Evangelion third impact song of showing all the things from 2020, the thing from earlier. That I was hollering so hard to look in that, especially remembering that traumatizing scene. It's like, how can you parody all of that? So good luck, Rockstar. But here's the thing: like, many people are even more hyped for GTA 6 now, because now it feels real. They know it's a game. Even seeing it in that state, now you know like the game is real. So
about it.
Yeah. So
it's one of those like, all right, gonna go back to sleep, wake up when the next crazy thing goes down, you know?
Oh yeah. In the meantime, there's a few other things. So like story number 2, Paul. This one aflame the Twitch, the streamer community. So this is a story from GameSpot. Twitch is changing its revenue split for its biggest streamers from 2023 onward. Story by Darren Bonthwis from GameSpot. Streaming platform Twitch has announced changes to its revenue system that will kick in starting next year, with this new update affecting some of its biggest streamers. The current Twitch model for revenue works on a 50-50 split between partner streamers and the platform when dealing with paid subscriptions, while bigger streamers get a more generous 70-30 split. This will change in June 2023, as streamers will get to keep 70% of the subscription revenue on the first 100,000 earned, and the share will then revert to a 50-50 split. The new threshold will have an impact on Twitch's top 10% of streamers. And one of the reasons for the policy change is due to an increased cost in video hosting, according to a blog post from Twitch president Dan Clancy. Delivering high definition, low latency, always available live video to nearly every corner of the world is expensive, Clancy wrote. Using the published rates from Amazon Web Services interactive video services, which is essentially Twitch video, live video costs for a 100 CCU streamer who streams 200 hours a month are more $1,000 per month. We don't typically talk about this because, frankly, you shouldn't have to think about it. We'd rather you focus on doing what you do best. It's worth noting that Amazon owns Twitch, which acquired it back in 2014 for around $970 million in cash. The rest of the Twitch streaming community will remain largely unaffected by this update, who are on a standard agreement with premium subscription terms. This is interesting.
It's one of those things where, okay, so if I was a really huge Twitch streamer, I'd be all pissed about it. Of course, this is only supposed to affect the 10%, so I don't care about them because they're already getting plenty of money. I don't really like the fact that Twitch is trying to be greedy about this because Amazon owns Twitch and owns the servers.
Yeah.
They don't care about the money that's being spent on those servers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like my breaking point. It's like, if this was just Twitch on its own, I would be more understanding. It's Amazon, one of the richest companies. Like Jeff freaking Bezos has how much money? So much money that he spent God and little amounts on these Rings of Power TV show, which, by the way, fourth episode wasn't good. And it's like if they had that kind of money, they absolutely can do that. They're just being greedy. That to me, like that's just Amazon trying to be greedy of wanting to like offload its cost to its top percent of streamers that are literally what makes Twitch like receive its viewerships. It's like that's kind of like the catch-22. It's like they're gonna affect the people that literally bring the eyeballs to Twitch. The 10% big streamers are the ones that bring your eyeballs, and now you're like different. You're literally now gonna like cut their revenue, even though it has to be like until a certain threshold. The thing to me is like, imagine just I try to think of it in practical terms. Imagine if you were one of these top 10% streamers that you have like mortgage a house based on like the amount of revenue you tend to do, and getting this new split kind of like undercuts what you usually earn. I can imagine being pissed about that because of them trying to do that to you, and especially knowing the reasoning for it is like, that's why I understand why there's a ruckus. Obviously, they mentioned that the lower end streamers are not going to be affected by this, but now it's like, if you want to become a top streamer, you know that you're going to have a lot of the money you make being undercut and them absorbing it. So that kind of sucks.
I was just thinking about while you were saying that, they're giving them almost a year before this happens. And I don't know if you remember when Facebook Gaming tried doing their thing, and they paid, what was it? I think
Ninja.
They paid Ninja for like $1 million or something to exclusively do that. This is the perfect time for the competition to either make a new version of their own streaming whatevers, and then pay any of these people. Say, hey, well, they're going to do the Epic Store process. Say, hey, we'll give you more than the 50-50 split that's happening. Come over and do your stuff over on our thing. And it's just, this is another case of Twitch being greedy and thinking they can get away with it because where else are they going to go? But these, and you know,
Facebook Gaming's dead, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not saying specifically Facebook Gaming, but some other tech giant is going to create their own streaming service after this. And this is weird. And this is weird because I think the only other competitor right now that could potentially host streamers is YouTube, and YouTube's already weird with the way they monetize. So bad.
Yeah.
It's kind of shocking how a lot of the stuff now that people used to be able to make livings for is
Mm-hmm.
now like completely controlled by the whims of a company. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't make your own stuff unless it's hosted somewhere. So
Yeah.
then you have to deal with you have to pay Caesar what is Caesar's, basically.
Yeah, but it's still like so gross that you being owned by the company that owns those servers is trying to undercut that and trying to put it as like they're rising cost of blah blah blah. It's like when I know the same company is spending an ungodly amount of money on Lord of the Rings. So that's why I understand the anger, even if it's just like that top percent. But hey, you're like literally slapping giving a slap in the face of the people that are making your platform. So I give them all justification for their anger, even if we're not even barely close to that because we're not even streamers ourselves. So, but yeah, justify your anger. Let's see if a new streaming platform shows up and tries to like swoop in. That's how literally the impetus for Epic Games Store, kind of like how you mentioned, like that's how that rose. Like Steam had that 70-30, 70-30 split, and then Epic was like, we'll have 88-12. Come over. So number 3, Paul. So blasting through it. This one was an interesting one, and now we're reading this from Insider Gaming. This is the new website from the one Tom Henderson, which we've read many leaks from him earlier this year that have turned out to be true, including like the week that God of War Ragnarok was going to launch, and the name of the special editions that turned out to be true. So he was like, I'm guest spotting on different random websites to give my leaks. I'm just going to pay for my own and do it because I'm credible enough. So he got the scoop. Sony to launch new PlayStation 5 with a detachable disc drive, sources suggest. He says, the PlayStation 5 is set to get a unique overhaul in the middle of fiscal year 2023, with the new console launching around September 2023, say sources. Sources familiar with Sony's plans have shared details under the condition of anonymity, outlining the next iteration of the PlayStation 5. It's been suggested that this new console will completely replace the A, B, and C chases that have been in production since the console's launch. The console, currently named the D chases PlayStation 5, will have almost identical hardware to the existing consoles already on the market. The most surprising new feature of this new PS5, though, is that the console will have a detachable disc drive. The detachable disc drive will be connected to the PlayStation 5 using an extra USB-C port on the back of the console. It's understood that this new PlayStation 5 console will be sold on its own in a bundle with the detachable disc drive. It's also understood that disc drives can also be purchased separately. So if it gets busted, there's no need to buy an entirely new console. Sources have implied that although the new detachable disc drive is portable, it will not ruin the aesthetics of the console and will attach to it without looking external, presumably meaning the new PlayStation 5 will look similar to the existing model. This is weird. Very weird.
We were talking about the possibility of Xbox
doing
something like this
because that was patented. They found a patent of them trying to do a disc drive that you can insert into the Xbox Series S, because that's a completely diskless free console. In order for people to take advantage of their backwards compatible discs, if they still want to hold on those. I'm not that guy. I went full digital, so I'm good at that.
I think this is just one of those cases of like, all right, it's kind of out of left field, but considering Xbox really wants to do it, it makes sense that Sony would want to as well. It's just like there's less of a demand because there isn't that huge catalog of backwards compatible games, but it's like, whatever. There's enough PS4 games out there that it's going to make it still. There's a million GameStops. There's a million other secondhand stores out there selling games that are, on sale on the PlayStation Network for $60 that you can buy for $5 in those places. And especially if you had to buy a digital, this actually makes sense that it's like, all right, you were forced to buy this because it's all we had. Here's a disc drive you could buy separately. And that way you don't have to buy a whole new system.
I think, to me, if Tom Henderson sources are correct with this, would this mean that this new PlayStation 5 will then completely eliminate the current disc model and then the current digital model?
I mean, I guess theoretically, but I mean, the way it is now, that would mean that it's just a digital with
a disc drive.
Thing. So, I mean, I guess theoretically it'll make it redundant, but then it depends on the pricing of the extra piece, the accessory.
To me,
then it would be the same price.
I think it's like, it would make sense for a new model to launch at all because it's the 3-year mark. It's insane to think that 2023, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S are going to be in the 3-year mark. It doesn't feel like that because cross generation is still happening.
So many people.
Yeah, cross generation has been extended like more than it should have. The consoles until recently have just been so hard to find, and we still don't have like the full-on next-gen games that are just for the new gen. So that's why it's weird to think that we're already at that spot where we usually would get the redesign. And to me, it's like because I remember, do you remember the original PS4, the one that had like the weird trapezoid shape and the that's the model that I still have.
That's the one that I had until it died on me finally.
Yeah, and then by 2016, that model completely kaput. The Slim and the Pro, they were both like basically the same shell, and then the Pro just added an extra to become the Big Mac.
Yep.
And it would make sense for this. So that's why I'm wondering. And there's always been rumors. There's still like rumblings of whether there's going to be a PS5 Pro this time around, because back then the PS4 Pro was a necessity because the innards of the base PS4 were 2010 innards. Remember, that generation got extended because of the financial crisis, and there were the whole hula baloo. Will there be consoles anymore? Mobile's going to take over. Do you remember that narrative? That console gaming was dead after
I remember it well.
Yeah, so
they're like, this is the last generation before everything just becomes a PC.
Yeah. And then those consoles, like especially the PS4, completely broke records, and we're still seeing the Switch breaking records. Console gaming is alive and well. So the PS5 as a base console, way stronger, way more like capable than the base PS4. The machine's really good, especially also the Series X. Like Microsoft and Sony really put so much work to make the current experience that we have so good. You don't play current games like games for PS5 and you're like, oh man, there's something. No, it's like those games, like they load super quick. Most of them look so good. It's like there's no need of like, oh man, I wish this could do this.
I'm for the price. People who are still like, oh, PC gaming's better, as like, in what way that actually matters at this point? Because
yeah, exactly. It's just semantics. It's just absolute semantics at this point. That is like I keep telling my brother, because my brother has been like interacting more with the PS5 recently after he went to his PC. Him trying to run Spider-Man Remastered on PC like at its full specs and seeing what that requires, and then him seeing it on PC, he identifies the ways that the game looks on console. It's like, I see that they're doing the low middle specs and all that, but for the price, it's insane that these consoles do what they do. Right. So I really wonder if right now, like, the Sony has been feeling the bottleneck of trying to ship two different models. One that's just the digital version that I have, that they intentionally underproduce. Even though this is a cheaper model, they're like, they make so few of those because they definitely want to push more people towards the one that has the big belly disc to the side. I wonder if this is them finally be like, yeah, we still want to offer the disc for the disc people, but let's just eliminate those two and let's just do one that then now the disc kind of just becomes a detachable thing. That's the only way that this makes sense.
Yeah. It's just logistics where they're like, all right, we can probably make the digital one far easier. We need to put these things out there and then just throw these disc things separately whenever they're ready, you know?
Yeah.
So
I would have loved that had been a thing for PS3, because I remember I told you about my disc drive dying, so and most of those games being on this.
Yeah.
So I think this is a cool idea, but I want to see it like this won't make sense if the model that you have still is launched next to this one, because it would feel redundant. So, and especially right now, I feel with them having to jack up the price in everyone other than North America, they will probably want to use this as a way to try to cut costs, to try to ease the stupid decision they made that Microsoft is not following. They're staying true with their current price. So number 4, Paul, this is also by Insider Gaming. This one was a hilarious story. So just to give a little context, over the past month, there was this, do you remember when I told you about the snitch? There was like this leaker that was getting everything correct.
It was theoretically a YouTuber.
Yeah.
Person.
No, it's someone like the rumors was that this snitch was probably a YouTube employee.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, so around this time, a new account popped up of someone called The Real Insider. that was kind of like leeching off of the popularity of the snitch, because the snitch has gone quiet for a little bit. And he was leaking a lot of stuff that ended up being correct. One of the bigger ones for this real insider was that he literally leaked the entirety of Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed showcase, all the games that they were going to show there. And to the point that it was so accurate that initially, like Jason Schreier, so someone tagged him on that post, and he was like, some of this is true, but there's a few that is not correct. And then and then he tried to corroborate a little bit, and then he was like, yeah, this seems fake. And then this account, his answer is like, I'll be looking forward to your apology after the showcase. And then Jason was like, yeah, I corroborated earlier, and yes, he was right. And then this real insider tweeted about that God of War was gonna be in the state of play. Like he tweeted, he just posted the picture of Kratos the day before that state of play that we watched last week, and that turned out to be correct. And so everyone was like, okay, so he's actually really well sourced. And then when he was tweeting something about, ironically, he started tweeting about Silent Hills and Abandoned again, like that, finally unearthing that stupid thing. Someone replied to him, but then the person that was here, he had his alternate account and replied to that thing that he tried to delete it so quick before people screenshotted it. And then he was exposed. So it's a YouTuber named Dan Allen Gaming, exposed as being the real insider. So a story by Tom Henderson reads, gaming YouTube Dan Allen Gaming, which is an Australian YouTuber, is allegedly the person behind the increasingly popular The Real Insider on Twitter. In a bizarre twist, it appears that Dan forgot to change his Twitter profile when replying to someone that was asking a question to The Real Insider on Twitter. And they have a screenshot that they were able to like screenshot. It was so funny. It's alleged that Dan Allen Gaming is the real insider after its account was deleted almost immediately after the screenshot was posted. In addition, Dan Allen Gaming on Twitter has also been deleted. The news might not seem substantial to some, but the apparent mistake from Dan has meant that he's very likely being caught breaking NDA information that has been signed. The Real Insider became increasingly popular following a leak that revealed all of the Assassin's Creed titles that will be released by Ubisoft. It's unclear what exactly will happen, but Insider Gaming has requested comment from Dan following the termination of both the Real Insider and the Dan Allen Gaming. And then a couple updates. Dan Allen has since taken to Twitter and admitted his wrongdoing. And then in the second update, Dan Allen Gaming has since taken to his YouTube channel to apologize. In his apology, Dan admitted to breaking NDA's material of Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed, but stated that the majority of the leaks were educated guesses. The Silent Hill rumor was one leak in particular that Dan had admitted to be false. Dan said that the reason for the account was because of the clout and the buzz of thousands of people waiting on what you're going to say. He continued with an apology to the community, content creators, journalists, developers, and PR, with whom he's built up long-term relationships over the years. I'll just say this guy's fucked. Let's just throw it out there. You have no idea what breaking an NDA does to you. Yeah, NDAs is like
very legally problematic issues. This isn't just, hey, I had journalistic things. Mm-hmm. Like that's the big line that you can't cross as a journalist. Like you can have sources and stuff like that, but if you sign an NDA and then you tell people, that's bad. And now they've basically proven that he was the one that broke all of this.
And it was so funny when that happened, because there's like the snitch he had a Discord that he opened briefly for some people to get in before he closed it down. So it's like an exclusive club. Jason Schreier got in there. And then Jason Schreier went in a full deep dive, analyzing every tweet and like the kind of like how can I say this? The conspicuous timing of when the insider would tweet, and then when the main account of this Dan Allen Gaming would tweet about specific things, always at the same time. And that's how he like nailed him down. And the things that this reminds me of, back in 2018, there was this IGN guy that he used to be a YouTuber. His name was Philip Musin. He was caught in a plagiarism scandal where he like plagiarized the Dead Cells review from like a YouTuber called Boomstick XL. And Boomstick XL was the one that brought that to light to be like, hey, so I want to tell you something, guys. It's like this IGN guy like completely copied word for word and almost in same syntax my review for Dead Cells, and here's like the proof. And then that guy was immediately fired. Like IGN had to take down that review, and then look everything and fire that guy. And then that guy, Philip Musin, because he was a YouTuber, went back to YouTube and he tried to do like an apology video where he was like, yeah, it's like this is how I understood how you review stuff, and don't believe the slander from people like Jason Schreier saying that I've always been doing this. So Jason, keep trying to find all your false allegations. Then Jason found 10 reviews he did that were plagiarized. Don't bait Jason Schreier. He may be an asshole, but actually he's a real journalist and he will get you. And he was so funny. That game was like, that was the equivalent of the Simpsons meme of stop, he's already dead. But it's like, and what's funny is that this guy, this Dan Allen Gaming, the real insider, he kept using Jason Schreier's apology to be like, oh, remember when he told me he was wrong? He kept baiting him. And look, it happened again. And now I feel bad. He's going to become real poor with all the losses because you don't sign an NDA and don't expect consequences, even if you apologize. It's like, they trust it. And here's the worst part. This happening, I feel bad for other YouTubers that are actually legally that play by the rules and do everything correct. He screws up those people because then they're going to keep clamping down and be like, this is why we're not going to work with YouTubers. Look what one of them did. Always the bad apple screwing it for everyone. So moving on. It was just funny, Paul. It was a self-own. Just seeing that it'll happen because he forgot to switch his account.
It's probably the few times where we get actual justice on the internet these days.
Yes. I just hope that the good people don't get screwed over this, but good riddance for that, I tell you. Yeah. Number 5, Paul. This one is, we're going into quicker ones, but this one's a little bit of a heartbreaker for me because of who's involved. Former PlayStation US boss Sean Layden announces Tencent role. Layden, who was chairman of the company's worldwide studios group when he left Sony in 2019, announced on LinkedIn on Monday that he hoped to help Tencent deepen their activities within the games industry. Chinese conglomerate Tencent has already invested in more than 800 firms and is one of the biggest companies in the world by market value. As well as owning League of Legends maker Riot Games, it also has a 40% stake in Epic Games and holds shares in Activision Blizzard, Ubisoft, as we recently learned, PUBG Studios parent company Krafton Platinum Games, and Marvelous Inc. I am delighted to share that I have recently joined Tencent Games as a strategic advisor, Layden announced on Monday. In this new role, I hope to advise, assist, and support the team at Tencent as they deepen their activities and commitment within the industry to which I've devoted the majority of my career. We are at an epoch-defining moment in gaming and interactive entertainment. There are many possible roads ahead, but only a few are profound, broadening, inclusive, edifying, inspiring, and sustainable. I'm thrilled to continue this journey of discovery and thank Tencent for the opportunity. Layden's most recent role at PlayStation was chairman of Worldwide Studios. He was previously president and CEO of PlayStation's American operation and has performed various roles since joining Sony in 1987. I'm going
to play the role of the casual person that doesn't know about this nor seems to care. Why does this matter so much?
Sean Layden spearheaded the golden era of the PlayStation 4 by allowing all the developers to do the games they wanted to make. He was the predecessor of who we have right now. So that it's a role that's now like divided between Jim Ryan and now Herman Holst, who used to do who was the director over at Guerrilla Games, and now he oversees all first party. He held that with Shuhei Yoshida, which is a really beloved Japanese figure from Japanese PlayStation that right now it's over the Indie Initiative. Sean Layden was the guy that he would be at a Sony press conference and really tout the value of the unique game. He literally, in his first press conference in 2014, he mentioned a game named Bib Ribbon, which was a game that he mentioned that wasn't a big seller for the original PlayStation, but helped establish the identity of the brand. It wasn't about sales, it was about the purity of the artistry. I don't understand how someone like that, mentioning things like, there are many possible roads ahead, but only a few are profound, broadening, inclusive, edifying, inspiring, or sustainable. You're trying to do inclusive with the CCP. Remember, Tencent is like in the thralls of the Communist Party of China. What does the Communist Party of China do? They hate the gays. They hold freaking concentration camps for the Muslim, like down in South China, and like it really sucks that I don't know, like I bet you Top Dollar, they offered him so much money to convince him, because he left Sony in 2019 because he was burning out of the industry, and then he had been like helping through strategic consulting, and he was actually beating the drum of like, hey, game development that takes 5, 6, 7 years to make games, all these bloated games that then end up costing $200+ million, that's not a sustainable model. We should try to bring back the 12 to 15 hour game. Apparently, like, that's where Miles Morales came from. He was still chairman. He was still chairman of Sony because that Miles Morales was greenlit in 2018 while he was still there, and it came out in 2020 after he had left. We haven't seen a Miles Morales style game announced or come out since that. That was a properly priced, lower budget, shorter game, and him joining Tencent this way is like, he had his roots in console gaming. Tencent's not about that. They're all about like the mobile, like nickel and diming. It's kind of what I told you about the Ubisoft presentation they did. Made so much sense how heavily mobile inspired it was, based on who recently made an almost majority investment, which was Tencent. So
let me pose a question then. When you have a company that's technically doing everything that they're doing legally, however, you really hate what they're going to do, how do you destroy a company like that?
It's impossible when they have so much money.
Part of me wonders, considering he's a strategic advisor, in everything you've told me, he might be in this overly optimistic state of the only way to face off against something like this is to get inside of its actual decision-making process and convince these people who are on this advisory board to make better decisions.
Yeah,
that's all I can think is this guy really wants that to change, and because all that Tencent is doing is technically legal, nobody can stop them from doing that. That's what I think is going on, is he wants things to change, and
I feel he's gonna get a rude awakening because
he very well might.
Because I can imagine, because the Sean Layden was that from all the recent CEOs that Sony had, like from the 2006 onwards, from 2006 to 2013, it was a guy named Jack Tretton. He was a money guy, but he had charisma. Like, you liked hearing that dude, and he at least understood the value of the importance of the creativity of gaming, even though he didn't have game development background. Sean Layden was more about the game, that he actually worked on games when they brought him in as CEO, when he took over Jack Tretton. And no one can deny the 2013 to 2019 era of PlayStation 4, golden era. Yep. And now we're in the dark ages with Jim Ryan crying over Call of Duty right now. He understood what's needed to keep the pure artistry of gaming, and maybe he could be like, now that I see at Tencent, they clearly have so many cooks in the kitchen with who they've invested with, what they sort of own, or where they have put people in, that maybe I can try to steer the ship here. But the thing is that, how can you steer a company that is clearly in the thralls of the Communist Party of China, that is very clear what they believe in?
Yeah, that's one of those things that always... it doesn't sound like a good process, but it's so early in that process that you're just...
Yeah. I hope in a year we hear, oh yeah, I left Tencent. I bet you that could happen, because it just doesn't seem like the right company for a person with his kind of values. I tell you, it's like that. That to me is like the sad part. And again, it's like, even if you try to make a deal with the devil, I tell you, the devil always gets his tendrils on you. So, penultimate story, Paul. This is for you. EA's Motive Studio confirms new single-player Iron Man game, developed in collaboration with Marvel Games. This is by BGC story by Tom Ivan. Developed in collaboration with Marvel Games, the single-player third-person action-adventure title is currently in the pre-production phase. The game's development team is being led by executive producer Oliver Prull, who previously worked on Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy at Eidos Montreal. We're thrilled to collaborate with the talented team at Motive Studio to bring their original vision of one of Marvel's most important, powerful, and beloved characters, said Marvel Games Vice President and Creative Director Bill Roseman. Their experience delivering both established entertainment worlds and thrilling gameplay, combined with their authentic vision for the armored icon, will fuel our quest to deliver a love letter to a legendary hero in the form of the ultimate Iron Man video game. Motive, which previously developed Star Wars Squadrons, is currently handling EA's Dead Space remake. It's an honor and privilege to have the opportunity to make a video game based on one of the most iconic superheroes in entertainment today, said Iron Man exec producer Paul. We have a great opportunity to create a new and unique story that we can call our own. Marvel is encouraging us to create something fresh. We have a lot of freedom, which is so engaging for the team. EA said the Iron Man project is the first of several new games being created through a collaboration with Marvel. The company is also reportedly making a single-player open-world Black Panther game. We talked about it a few episodes back. It was recently claimed that the project is in the early stages of development at a new studio headed by former Monolith Productions boss Kevin Stephens. I have a negative angle for this, but I wanted to hear your praise for this.
All right. So I know we have our own amount of negativity and frustration with the things that EA and Marvel have done lately. However, just picture... have you played the 360 Iron Man game? That was the tie-in with the movie. Oh, he's got it. He opened the dimension door and disappeared. There it is. Yes. Okay, so at least we're on the same page with that. Despite the frustration that game kind of had, it had no excuse for how much it slapped. That was a great fun game to play, and I kept replaying. I see your face and I don't care, because being able to fly in a cool armored suit, have like this entire sandbox, you get to land, blow stuff up, you had tanks, you had helicopters, you had other armored individuals coming after you, and it was fun. And I would go back through that game with the really janky Iron Man suits in different versions you could unlock for it. I never actually played Iron Man 2, the game, but
it was better. I'll say that. I rented it. It was better.
I had a feeling. I just never got around to that because by that point I had different interests. But I know it had a lot of problems. It was very justifiably really messed up. But there were parts of that idea that lit something in my head where I was like, there's a cool like sandbox, you could fly, do whatever, and it sounds like a perfect creation. And then we just didn't get games where you could fly, because it's apparently very difficult in the realm of game development to do that. So
I'll say this, that Iron Man game, the ideas of it, at least the sort of ambition that it was showing, kind of promising. The ILM Iron Man suit that they make for that game, shockingly well detailed. That Iron Man 2008 game is the worst game I've ever played in my life. I am not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. It really is. It's the worst game it's the worst game I have bought and I still own. Because
we have played way worse, I think.
No, that's the worst one. And I tell you, try to go back to it. You will be absolutely
I'm not going to. I'm not going to go back to it. But
and I tell me in that era where I try to the only way that I could convince my parents to buy me games often was if they were movie tie-ins, because me and my brother would constantly try to rally, be like, hey, this is the game about this movie that we both liked, and we would sometimes play it. I had never had a game I played that I wanted to roll on glass, and how utterly frustrating it was in its objectives. You could fly in that game a lot. Yes, you had 10 million missiles being thrown at you. There was no time in that game where you could at least chill out and just enjoy some cool scenery for the kind of technology you had. And the second game funneled everything a little bit closer together to become a little bit more funneled, and it made it more fun. But yes, the whole being able to fly around and a kind of power fantasy of having that flying suit it just went frustratingly unrealized there. And also, that game is one of the funniest, the most reviled games in gaming history in its reviews. One of the most unanimous 3 out of 10s that you could find for many reviews. It's so funny. And because I remember when I saw it was IGN gave it a 3.8 out of 10. I still bought it because I was like, I like how that Iron Man suit looks, because and I know I'll try to force myself, and I wanted to cry at how cheap. There was this snow level. That's when I stopped. I was like, I can't play this anymore. Me and my brother kept playing turns. So it sucks that the potential was there. But I have also come to realize flying is not a fun mechanic in games. Like it just isn't. That's why many people don't do it.
It's impossible to get right, it seems.
And like to me, the only game that has tried to get flight as close as possible is the Superman Returns game from 360.
Yep.
The rest of that game, doo-doo. But trying to fly around that game was like the only thing. It was like basically just going as far up as you could in Metropolis, look down, and then just go there and then see the frame rate tank. Yeah, and Anthem, it's ironic. This studio didn't work on Anthem, but EA is the one that had BioWare. Like BioWare tried to do a flying game with Anthem, and that showed again. It was like, it looks cool. It's just not mechanically interesting. I do wonder though, like because EA usually tends to use the Frostbite technology. I wonder if they're gonna go to BioWare and be like, "Can you send us the source code that you use for to do flying in Anthem? We're gonna do it in this game." Maybe that's where they get it and try to put that in a non-looter shooter. I'll say this though, because to me, the fact that yes, Motive is working on the Dead Space remake, that's a remake, so at least they're doing something. This team was being shown that they're working on a new IP back in 2020, EA Motive, that had flying in it. It looked that it had flying in it.
Yeah.
Did that game become this now? That's kind of like what I was like mentioning in the when I saw this being announced, that I threw that hot take that I was like, I'm being very concerned that we're getting a lot of these Marvel games being announced by some of the best talent in the industry, because we're at the point where in this generation we should be seeing we should be hearing at least some more new announced IPs from the top tier talent, and seeing that their talents are gonna be like stuck on a Marvel game. In subject matter, that's exciting because it's subject matter that we know. But then at the same time, I just fear that we're now getting way too many licensed games, like in constant succession, like not too far from when we heard the Amy Hennig Captain America and Black Panther game. Now we're hearing about this, and now we hear that EA is not gonna do an opposite Star Wars deal, and now they're in a Marvel contract where they're gonna be making a bunch of other games on top of the other licensed games that are gonna be like thrown left and right. It just feels like, even though it sounds like it's exciting to have this many, let's try to like let's try to see the forest for the trees. That we can't have this generation just be defined by licensed stuff. That to me is kind of scary, because after a previous generation where the new IPs that we got are so few compared to how, go back to 2007, the birth of BioShock, the birth of Uncharted, the birth of Assassin's Creed, we haven't had a moment, like we've been getting so many sequels to that since then, and now this is happening. And to me, it's like, it's kind of like what's happening with movies right now. Everything's just becoming so risk averse because people are just what's new and familiar. And that with movies, I had already come into, I had made peace with that. It's like, yeah, it's like, that's how the industry has kind of like swing by, and yeah, Disney and Marvel controlling that. I would hate if that also seeps into gaming. That was kind of like my reaction when I saw this. But in theory, I feel, like I mentioned, even though that Iron Man 2008 game is one of the worst games I've ever played, I think there is just something, if you can have like an actual competent developer do it, it could be fine. Like even then, like for example, playing as Iron Man in the Marvel's Avengers game, there's some fun you can have with that character sometimes. So we'll see. It's like, but that's just kind of like my soapbox. But I tell you that 2008 game, even though I still have it there, it's like, it's just a reminder of one of the worst games I've ever played. it just is. That was one of the first real heartbreakers, finally realizing, yes, like I try to really love this. So because
I kind of get reminded of this whole thing where it's like, at what point is the gaining of class and standards a bad thing?
Mm-hmm.
Because this was clearly before I had them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, whoa, this is freaking awesome. I get to fly around as Iron Man. It's great. And then I have this great memory of it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can't play anything close to that, theoretically at least. And then it's like, man, it really almost sucks to get better at something, because then you can't
I think it was like around that. Think about it at that time. Like, how old are you right now? 29, right? So, and you're turning 30, soon. That was 2008. You would have been 16. I would have been 15. I think that was still at a time where we didn't have our own money to buy our own games. And that was subject matter, especially me now understanding a little bit of your family background, how you had to like twist into knots to try to get them to buy you games, and you're trying to fake explain plots that were not true just for you to have them. Again, I do remember some of that time that the only way that I could convince my parents to buy some games for me was because they were from a movie we all liked. We went to see, so it was like we're playing this subject matter. I do remember that. So at that time, you mentally structure your mind into trying to justify that, yeah, even if this game is not good, I'm gonna try to make it good. I'm gonna like find the good in it. And the thing is that I remember that since I got on PS3, the early PS3 era for me was like Spider-Man. I remember Spider-Man 3, the Transformers, the game, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, Pirates of the Caribbean, or World's End, like the Incredible Hulk, like all those games. It was like all reviewed very poorly. And only Iron Man was the only of those games that I played. I was like, I couldn't find like as much as I try to force it, be like, no, I'm gonna find the good of this, even though it got so panned. That was my breaking point. I was like, this game really absolutely sucks ass. And that broke my heart because oh crap. Is this finally a time where I cannot justify myself anymore with these games? And that was around the time that those license games started fading away and we started getting the good stuff. So it was a nice transition into the good part of that generation, because I got the Iron Man game before Metal Gear Solid 4. So when I got that Metal Gear game, I was like, yes, now I know this is what a really, really great game is like. But I think that's what happened. It was like we, as younger, we try to justify the few things that we could get our parents to buy us. That's how it was. And now we have more options. So it's easier to not wave that away in a way. If it's a little too much, that Iron Man game is one that crosses the line way too far. And I tell you, it looks like doo-doo. It absolutely, you would be shocked how bad it looks and how bad it really plays. So
maybe so, just out of the fact that it's been so long.
Mm-hmm.
However, I want to
14
say
years.
There is still a part of me that loves the concept enough that I'm just glad that we're getting another Iron Man game, that they're going to make an attempt at flying. I mean, they can make ships look at No Man's Sky and stuff. If you can make spaceships work,
I think it's different because it's
right.
And spaceships is because you're in an actual cockpit, so there's like extra mechanics that you can like get into it, like the actual dogfighting, all that just superhero flying, even though it's technically the same, it's so weird that it feels dull compared to just being in a ship flying. And many people love ship flying.
It just depends on what I think you're trying to focus on. I'm gonna have to find it, but there's somebody that I follow that's making a wizard flight game where the Quidditch
flying.
No. Like he's a wizard with like airships and stuff, but he can cast a flight spell on himself, and you fly, and he has this cool coat that just flies around with him. And so he'll post like early builds of like just like that music game that we had.
The Sack Shoda, that looks so cool, by the way.
Right,
it's an indie.
And so it's in that same vein where it's like as the one or two guys that are working on that game get a little closer, they'll post something like a cool little video about it. Anyway, this one was all about flight. So it's like I've seen that if you put the right amount of focus in the right areas, it works. You just have to know what tricks with the camera, what tricks with the momentum, and what parts of the character that can move to make it look interesting. So I think something like Iron Man's suit, where as you move, like armor pieces shift and stuff, you could do something like that. But I can see also why, I mean, look at Superman, where capes and fabric are the hardest thing to create,
to nail, and not clipping and all that.
So that's where the design really has to do a lot of legwork. But if you can get that right,
and I think that's why like a superhero like Spider-Man just works so well, because you're flying around in that game, but the fact that it's the web swinging, it's a mix of momentum and physics and dexterity to like really get into flow. It just gamifies that kind of traversal in a way that just straight up flying requires a little bit of extra design intent that I don't think anyone has really cracked for it to just be fun. Because flying will always look fun, it's just not fun to control just as a flying thing.
I think it just depends on how it's executed, because I mean, even if you just lifted the concept of there's a throttle button and then you just fly faster, and maybe you have like little air trails as you go fast, like you can do things to it. I think just nobody's willing to deal with the frustration of that.
Oh yeah, and I bet it's just in play. It's all about play testing. I bet it's like everyone that wants to find the fun and those stuff. Yeah. There's a reason it hasn't happened. Think about how long it's been, or people are just so traumatized about Superman 64. Which I will say, I will say this is that because I only played that briefly. That's considered the worst game of all time, Superman 64. So
that's
the Iron Man game. Yeah, the Iron Man game is just the worst one I have ever played. I know there's worse stuff in Steam that's garbage, but that was like a Sega game. I remember. Final story, Paul. A more like even kill news to round us out. We got lucky to get NPD results based on when we were recording. So a story by Tom Ivan. Madden NFL 23 and PS5 topped US games industry sales in August. According to data published on Tuesday by the NPD Group, 2022 marks the 23rd consecutive year that a Madden NFL game has been the top-selling title during its launch month. This year's series entry is already the 5th best-selling game of 2022 based on dollar sales, behind only Horizon Forbidden West, Pokemon Legend Arceus, Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, and frontrunner Elden Ring. Fellow new entry Saints Row debuted at number 2 on August software sales chart, ahead of Marvel's Spider-Man, which jumped 81 places to number 3 following its PC release. NPD analyst Matt Piscatella said Spider-Man was August's bestseller across tracked Steam titles. PS5 was last month's top-selling hardware platform in both unit and dollar sales. Sony's console is the market leader in dollar sales during 2022, but Nintendo Switch has sold more units so far this year. That's interesting because this was also a year where a lot of Xbox had a lead in many months. Remember we were talking about how it's like, yeah, Xbox is kind of taking lead in some of these.
Yeah.
Interesting.
This is where like my brain just kind of doesn't process the information that I receive from it, but it's like, it's one of those, oh yeah, no brainer, but also, oh, good for them. And then I'm more shocked that Saints Row was at number 2, and I mean, not shocked, but Spider-Man, of course, jumping all the way back up to number 3 again. So it's like, all right, good for them. They managed to eke that one out. And then, of course, Elden Ring. It's like the games that you hear people talking about are usually going to be the biggest sellers. So, I mean, we've been hearing people talking about a lot of these.
So Madden came out 4 days before Saints Row in August.
Got it.
Yeah, but even then, it's like, even if it was just a 4-day lead, Madden's always huge. Madden is like everyone's tradition in August, and even though the Madden games keep getting more and more panned, like to me, it's always it's always like clockwork. Watching the Angry Joe review for Madden every year, he eviscerates those games like all the time. So because they didn't improve, but a lot of people really love their sports games. I tell you, but Saints Row release is like, I always say like debuting in the top 3 is like, this is not if you didn't debut on number 1, you're bust. It's like if you're just behind Madden, which is like a mainstay, Saints Row did relatively well, especially considering how critically panned it was.
It starts at number 2. That is fantastic for how we heard about Saints Row.
Exactly.
The fact that like despite the vocal minority, people showed out and bought the crap out of Saints Row.
Yeah, this top 20. Yeah, this top 20. It's interesting for August. Let me read it real quick. God damn it, this is like not wanting to load. Come on, load.
I have it up right now. It's, take
there.
Over whenever you catch it.
Yeah, I got it. So Madden was number 1. Saints Row was number 2. They mentioned again Marvel Spider-Man number 3. And here's what's funny is like NPD usually doesn't track digitals from like Steam. I wonder how much like there was synergy to buy that Steam release for people to again buy that game on console. But who knows? Maybe they also tracked, and that's what put it here number 3.
I feel like it would have to, unless that thing that Nintendo does where they blend their PC and sales.
Yeah, it really depends, unless Sony has given them carte blanche to be like, now you can mix those Steam charts if you want to add an NPD, because digital stuff showing up in NPD, it's developer and developer basis. They're the ones that want to provide that info.
This is where, like, just to say that one thing, it almost sounds so subjective because the developers control the number, and then the NPD people report that number.
Yeah.
So what's the stop? The people, like, some of these are console only, some of these are across all consoles. And
so the interesting thing with NPD is that if anything is being sold at retail, NPD tracks it. That, like, if there's a retail copy that they can track, that's going to show up here. You don't. The only digital info is the one that has to be more consensual. But
that's what I mean. Like, something that could be at the top might only be up there because that developer included their digital sale.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, how much does that actually matter in a certain way of what we're looking at with this?
Yeah, just think about it this way. So let me go down the list. So Elden Ring is still number 4. That gives full digital and physical data, still holding up, and it was number 2 last month. So just to tell you about how strong Elden Ring's haul it's been. Multiverses, which was the number one seller for NPD last month, despite it charting NPD because they were selling at Founder Pack. That's what's so funny. The game's free to play, but it charted. That Founder Pack was huge.
People really wanted to unlock all those characters.
Yeah.
As it stands, you get like 2.
Yeah, and it's a huge grind to get them all through the free-to-play stuff.
It's not worth it.
Mario Kart 8, it's number 6 here, and Nintendo hasn't given them digital, just to kind of give you an idea. So, in just physical, it's still being number 6 in this. It's like Mario Kart 8 is just a money printing machine. Minecraft is number 7, even though that's on Game Pass, but it still sells in many systems. Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga still holding into the top 10, even being in just number 8. MLB The Show 22, that's again, even though it's available on Game Pass on Xbox, it's still remaining in the top 10. That's a big win for Sony San Diego. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 at 10, and debuted at number 4 at the tail end of last month. So still relatively holding there. And then just the bottom ones are funny. Digimon Survive at 11, Horizon Forbidden West at 12, Call of Duty Vanguard at 13, Far Cry 6 at 14. Soul Hackers to the Atlas RPG didn't crack the top 10. Still debuted at 15. Not many people buy that one. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, even like not top 10, but being there. Gran Turismo 7 remaining in the. That's shocking to me that Horizon is sold more than Gran Turismo 7. I wasn't expecting that.
This is just for this month, though.
Yeah,
so that doesn't really shock me.
So let me see if it was 31 in. They're charting higher because there was a sale. That they were at $50 each, but it's still like Horizon sold more than Gran Turismo. And I told you that Gran Turismo is like one of Sony's biggest series.
I mean,
it used to be the big,
Gran Turismo 7 right now.
Yeah, they're no longer because they finally fixed it, but that was a calamity. That was a calamity early.
I was thinking about it recently, obviously revisiting Cyberpunk, where a lot of people now, it's like if it launched bad, it will be forever bad because they don't follow news, so they don't know that changes. So
yeah, and Horizon launched well.
Yeah, and Gran Turismo 7 didn't. So I think a lot of people were like, all right, not this one. I'll buy the next one whenever that happens, because people,
Some people are fickle.
We're not the majority where we buy everything. They're like,
I tell you,
yeah, maybe I'll.
But I tell you, this Gran Turismo 7 is gonna skyrocket in the numbers when the Gran Turismo movie comes out, because there's a Gran Turismo movie.
I just found out about that like yesterday. Yeah,
David Harbour from Stranger Things is gonna be in there because Sony just wants that stupid synergy now, because they've seen it work with Netflix, with Cyberpunk and Witcher. They all want that.
Gran Turismo doesn't even have a
story. Why? Yeah. I know.
Anyway.
I know. And then Kirby in the Forgotten Land, Skyrim is there, and Pokemon Legends Arceus. So it's an interesting list there. I'm really curious for what September's number 1 is. I bet it's gonna be NBA, because I think that game already came out, and
that came out. That's always going to be like the biggest deal.
I just want to see how high or how low Last of Us Part 1 is after all the hand wringing over the $70 price. That's going to tell the tale. So, and that concludes a lengthy news section, Paul. And real quick, let's read over the games that are coming out in the week of September 25th to October 1st, because there's already October next week.
That there's no way I'm going to be able to Google most
of
these, but at least I recognize a couple of them.
Yeah, so the 1.0 launch of Grounded launches on Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC on September 27, and that's on Game Pass, so yay. Hololive, I have no idea what that is. It's on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, also on September 27. Life is Strange Remastered Collection comes to Switch on September 27. The Fridge is Red. It's a PC game that also comes out on the 27th. The Legend of Heroes Trails from Zero comes out on PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC. I think that's an RPG. Comes out also on September 27th. Tunic comes out on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and Switch. Also on September 27th. If you have Game Pass, you can play that already. Deathburst, Let It Die comes out on PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 on September 28th. Brewmaster, which I assume you're brewing liquor, comes out on PC on September 29th. Dorf Romantic comes out on Switch on September 29th.
Well, that was the one that we saw at one of the shows.
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember what it was, but it does sound like one of those like quick snippet games.
Yeah.
Moonbreaker comes. I wonder if it has anything to do. I know was that Moon Crash, the movie that recently came out on HBO Max. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a different movie.
Yes. So, and because my dad was talking about it, he was like, oh, I heard this Moon Crash movie just came out on HBO Max. I was like, yeah, never heard of that one. So that comes out on September 29. Pathfinder.
Moonbreaker is that tabletop one.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway.
Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous comes out on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch on September 29. Interesting that there's no PS5 version. Valkyrie Elysium comes out on September 29 on PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. And I learned that Valkyrie Profile Lenneth, which is a remaster of the PSP game, is also coming out that same day on PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. So people that didn't know that Valkyrie Elysium is an established series, they will be able to also get the previous game in the same day.
Changed the name for that.
Yeah, they tried to probably have a different trademark to submit. So
yes, it's just gonna make it so hard for people to actually find it now.
Yeah,
nobody's gonna know to look up Profile Lenneth.
I'll say that in the you could just put Valkyrie Profile on the PS5 and PS4 store, and that's what's gonna show up.
I mean, like if you know about Valkyrie Elysium, you're not gonna know that there's more of that series to search. So you might search Valkyrie and maybe find it.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
General word.
I'll say it seems weird that they're launching them both in the same day. I would have thought Valkyrie Profile Lenneth could have been an August game to lead into the other one. So FIFA 23 comes out on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC on September 30.
And you know it's gonna sell.
Oh yeah, my brother already bought it on PC. So yeah. My Little Pony: A Maritime Bay Adventure comes to PlayStation 5 on September 30. And Witchy Life Story PC comes out on September 30. From this list, Paul, it's Grounded and Valkyrie Elysium for me. Grounded because it's on Xbox.
Don't forget Tunic.
I already have Tunic.
Yeah, that's right.
I already have Tunic on Xbox on Game Pass. Yeah, but it's for you. Yeah, for you.
Just Valkyrie Elysium, maybe Tunic if I decide it's worth it.
Watch some videos and see if it because again, I tell you, Series S, have that Game Pass there.
Yeah, for Christmas, but it's one of those things where I'm looking to be moving forward in my own life, and I can no longer afford to buy things for myself. That's where I'm reaching, and that's why I bought myself the PS5 and the PC as quick as I possibly could, so that I'm not currently in this stage needing to buy a lot of things for myself.
Remember, there's a all access plan where you can get a Series S for $25 a month. And you wouldn't have to pay for Game Pass Ultimate. That'll be all
together. It's more about the
together.
eventual price point of it. That it's not the like I have the cash for it, but I need to put that aside for like fixing my car and some other things. That it's just we'll see if I can pull it together. If I do,
the S is the cheap option, and that's a good thing. Like you wouldn't have to ever buy a game on Xbox. Think about it that way. Like you would only keep buying games on PlayStation 5 because that's your main stuff, but like it's easy to afford a Game Pass month. Like if there's like interesting games, and that's how you do it.
I will say it'll be nice to just get rid of that old brick of an Xbox One that sits on the other side of my TV. So if I do, that's gonna be
we're
upgrading. It's not a real
you're upgrading in the aesthetics. I tell you.
So we'll see.
And that concludes this week's 70th episode of the Alejandro and Paul. 70th.
70.
Yeah. I was listening to episode 49 yesterday, just out of curiosity, just to be like, where were we just back in April? What were we talking about? So it was funny. So because that episode we were like, oh yeah, we have 2 to go. before episode 50, and then I looked at the numbers after we recorded. I was like, crap, 50 is the next week. That's
and now we're 20 more down.
Can you believe just like how quickly time flies?
I remember one of those early episodes we tried to clickbait and say that we were banned in China.
Mm-hmm. And that was before, yeah.
that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Oh man, it's like it's always fun times. Always fun times with you. And we'll see where we go for the rest of this next 3 months. So we're close we're very, very close to breaking the 1,000 individual listens. And our Destiny Reacts is still growing. It's so crazy.
Feeling it somehow because reactions to Destiny events is the way to go for us in the future. So
I wonder if the algorithm has really picked up that we talked about damn Destiny or what we've been playing so many times that they're like, they probably talk about Destiny a lot. So let's throw this out to the algorithm. It's so weird. It's like I keep telling my dad, it's like YouTube algorithm is so weird. It's so weird, but I'm glad that's growing because then it's like I have the recommend best video for viewer, kind of like, that you can put.
Yeah.
And then eventually they can find the other stuff and at least get 1 view extra and other stuff. But where can people find you, Paul?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. I've been making a lot more art lately. I stopped for the last couple days, but I'm going to keep that going soon. And then I also post random gameplay videos of me breaking things. But that's also where you're going to find
it's still like, to me, I feel like, I'll say this, like the amount of times that you're able to post something of the game messing up, I feel like, is there something wrong with your console? Because it's like, it's so against like how my experience is, or I'm like, you play them in such a specific way that you should have been a play tester because you keep finding these ways to.
I want to say the latter because ever since I broke Dying Light and just how popular that post I made on my Facebook all those years ago was, I seem to find like very specific crevices as I'm trying to do things that it just breaks stuff. And but it's funny. It's always funny. It is what I'm really here for.
Yeah.
Where can they find you all?
They can find me at _Dorsegovia on Twitter. They can find me on Instagram at AlejandroSegovia93. And my written content, whenever I write something, thecriticalcorner.com. I'm in massive writer's block with that Naughty Dog thing, I tell you.
You might have to take a break from that and try something else.
I haven't even written anything because that writer's block has been real. I just wanted to rest. It's like the writing, I like it, but it can be really exhausting, I tell you. So, but I want to thank everyone that always listens to the show, where it's always a few or whoever eventually listens to it, is that we appreciate you because we know that it's a massive sea of content that's available. There are many different subsections, and we just appreciate that there's people that actually listen to us. It's like I never would have expected that within a year we're almost close to 1,000. So
me neither at all.
Yeah,
let us know what you think. I'd love to hear that y'all actually exist and that I'm not being gaslit.
I know. You're not, because it's like the proof is there. And it's mostly
every time it's because I say something that gets corrected. So
I know, but that's the direction. That was fun,
listeners.
Yeah, that's good. Always good for engagement, Paul.
Incorrect things.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. But
I'll see you next week, Paul, because can't wait to finally dive into a real fall again. Seriously. Can't believe it's been this quick. So you have a good one, everyone. Stay safe and stay healthy and be good to each other. And remember,
press X
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Hasta luego.